If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 1, Arriving in a New World. Caution. The first 10 chapters are time skip. In the depths of a dreamless abyss, he plunged, the darkness swallowing him whole. Yet, there was an odd serenity in his descent, a peculiar tranquility that wrapped around him like the tender arms of a loving mother. It wasn't fear that gripped him, instead, an inexplicable comfort embraced his very essence. As he sank further into the void, the echoes of his past reverberated through his consciousness. Scenes from a life once lived danced before his mind's eye, each moment a chapter in a story he had penned with purpose. The satisfaction of achieving his goals and the contentment of a life well lived filled him with a warmth that transcended the shadows. He had pursued his desires with unwavering determination, seizing every opportunity that came his way. His existence was woven with threads of passion and resilience, leaving behind a portrait of a man who had lived without regrets. In the enigmatic embrace of the abyss, he basked in the afterglow of a life fully realized. Suddenly, a sharp pain pierced his soul, disrupting the serene replays of his memories. Urgh! A guttural groan escaped him, shattering the tranquility that had cocooned him. Abruptly, his soul was yanked from the comforting dreamscape, and thrust into a harsh reality. Blinking back into consciousness, his eyes widened in shock. A new environment unfolded before him, unfamiliar and disorienting. His head throbbed with an insistent ache, and the dissonance between the dream and the waking world left him wary. He found himself trapped within a body that was not his own, a vessel that carried the weight of a different existence. As he surveyed his surroundings, a sense of foreboding settled over him, and the once warm embrace of the abyss now felt like a distant memory. He found himself standing in a dilapidated neighborhood, a ghost town devoid of vitality. Crumbling buildings stood as silent witnesses to the decay that surrounded him. Among the shards of shattered glass, he caught sight of his own reflection, a mere child, no more than 12, with crimson-red eyes and disheveled dark hair. Is that me? His clothes were ragged, a stark contrast to the memories of a life once filled with purpose and achievement. As he surveyed around, he noticed the wary gazes of adults fixated on him, their expressions laden with suspicion. "What the fuck are you looking at, hey?" one of them shouted at him. However, he completely ignored the guy. Yet, it was the sight of other children, fear etched into their faces, that sent a shiver down Raymond's spine. Bruises adorned their fragile bodies like a cruel testament to their shared suffering. "Hey, Raymond!" a voice called out, snapping his attention to a fellow child. The urgency in the voice carried a warning. "Stand down. You'll get beat up if you don't." Raymond. Furrowing his eyebrows, Raymond struggled to make sense of the chaotic scene unfolding around him. Before he could fully grasp his surroundings, a searing pain lanced through his head, memories of this young body flooding back. He winced, groaning in agony as he clutched his tiny skull. The leader of the group sent him a disapproving gaze. Approaching Raymond, who was in pain, he delivered a swift kick to the child's stomach. The force sent Raymond sprawling, crashing into the debris that cluttered the side of a broken building. The impact left him breathless, pain radiating from the abused area. As Raymond lay on the ground, the echoes of his past clashed with the harsh reality of the present. Raymond winced from the throbbing pain in his head and the ache in his stomach, trying to make sense of the situation. A wave of memories resurfaced through his tiny head. The body he now inhabited belonged to an orphan, deserted by parents and forced to survive on the streets. Alongside other kids, they begged for scraps, their meager existence controlled by a heartless gang that ruled the desolate neighborhood. Looking around, Raymond saw the harsh reality of their plight. Fucking animals! A lifeless child lay nearby, a victim of the gang's neglect. Memories flooded back, highlighting the routine tragedies that unfolded, sick kids left to perish, unnoticed by the uncaring thugs who only cared about the coins the kids brought in. Is this really worth it for such a small amount of money? Raymond mumbled to himself, shaking his head at the grim scene. Despite the pain, he gathered himself and stood up, taking a deep breath. His focus shifted to the gang's leader. The leader, a cruel figure in this bleak setting, shot Raymond a disdainful look. "Hey, you little beggar! Do you even realize how little you earned today?" he snapped, his frustration apparent. Raymond paid little attention to the scolding. Instead, he picked up a seemingly ordinary object from the ground, a small stick. It was an iron stick which most likely came from the ruins of the building. Ignoring the leader's anger, he asked a question that hung in the air like a challenge. "Do you know what you did wrong?" "Hey!" The leader's confusion turned to annoyance. "What's your game, kid?" he retorted, growing more irritated by the audacity of the little beggar before him. Ignoring the leader's rising anger, Raymond stood tall, playing with the iron stick in his hands while observing the person in front of him carefully. This only fueled the leader's fury, prompting him to approach Raymond menacingly. But Raymond paid no attention to the brewing storm. With a glint in his crimson eyes, he darted towards the towering leader, skillfully dodging a poorly aimed kick. Feeling uncertain of his situation, the leader reached for a weapon, but before he could react, a squelching sound rang out. Panic flashed across the gangster's face as he turned toward the source of the noise. Raymond had thrust the seemingly unimportant stick into the leader's neck. Stunned, the leader couldn't muster a scream. Realizing that it wasn't enough, Raymond quickly grabbed a dagger from the leader's side pocket, something he had noticed earlier. With determination in his eyes, he stabbed the leader multiple times in the chest. Each strike carried certainty, the small hands gripping the dagger defying their size. "You let your guard down, that was your mistake," Raymond's voice whispered into the dying leader's ear. The gangster's life slowly drained away, his wide-eyed disbelief reflecting the horror of his impending end. Raymond's crimson eyes glowed in the dim light as he watched on coldly. The leader's attempts to make a sound were drowned out by the rush of blood from his mouth. As life slipped away, the once mighty figure crumbled, defeated by the unexpected force embodied in the tiny Avenger. The gangsters could only point their fingers at Raymond in disbelief with their mouths open wide. Raymond wasn't bothered by the fact that he had just killed someone the second he arrived in this new world as he carefully watched his opponents. A simple death would be too merciful for scums like these. Gripping the dagger tightly, he frowned as his hand was trembling, realizing, "I'm too weak, this body is malnourished." Despite this, he didn't lose confidence. Instead, a bloodthirsty smirk spread across his tiny face, making the gangsters uneasy. He mumbled to himself, "I can't get hit even once, is it? Sure, let's do this." The gangsters immediately regained their composure as they exchanged glances and then charged at Raymond with their weapons at the ready. Raymond's crimson eyes unconsciously glowed brighter, adding an eerie intensity. Chapter 3, Chapter 2, A Clown. Corpses lay scattered around, blood staining the ground, and in the midst of the grim aftermath stood a kid no older than 12, coldly surveying the lifeless forms. He muttered disdainfully, "These guys were gangsters with such pathetic martial arts." Raymond shook his head, his face contorting with pain as he gritted his teeth. He glanced at his trembling hand, realizing that his weakened body couldn't sustain the moves he had employed to defeat the gangsters. "Ah, these are definitely torn." He furrowed his eyebrows, slowly making his way to a location etched in the memories of the malnourished kid whose body he now occupied, driven by the gnawing hunger within. As he looked around, Raymond noticed that the other kids who had been with him had fled in fear. He shook his head, muttering to himself, "This might be for the best." These kids had endured the hardships of the slum longer than Raymond had, so he trusted in their resilience. Navigating through the buildings, he reached a small corner with a dilapidated table and a broken-down wooden storage area, resembling a former kitchen now reduced to ruins. With a pained expression, he forced open one of the storage compartments. His eyes fell on a loaf of bread. Ignoring the discomfort in his weakened body, Raymond seized the bread and began devouring it with an urgency born of hunger. The taste of the bread hinted at its expiration, and he noticed discolorations as he consumed it. Despite its questionable condition, he had no other choice but to press on. In the midst of the crumbling kitchen, Raymond faced the harsh reality of survival, using whatever means were at his disposal to sustain himself in this unforgiving environment. With the water barely trickling from the faucet, Raymond continued devouring the bread, occasionally pausing to sip from the questionable water source. Confident in his tiny body's resilience, he knew he had built up enough immunity against the subpar food and the less than pure water. His memories attested to the routine nature of these survival measures among the kids in the slums. Some hadn't fared well, succumbing to poison or illness due to the lack of tolerance, but those who had roamed the slums with him had developed a certain resistance. Finishing the bread and quenching his thirst, Raymond let out a burp, only to be met with unexpected pain from his sore and torn muscles. He frowned as he sensed his consciousness gradually waning as his body's defense mechanisms kicked in. Spotting an empty space beneath what seemed to be a sink, Raymond curled up in the cramped hiding spot. The distant sounds of the slum became a mere murmur as he surrendered to exhaustion and pain, slipping into a restless sleep within the shelter of the dilapidated surroundings. Damn cockroaches! Raymond let out a sigh, his eyes fluttering open for a moment. The dim light revealed a handful of cockroaches boldly exploring his weary body. Powerless to shoo away these pesky invaders, he could only watch in resigned frustration as his surroundings blurred into darkness. The weariness of his malnourished body pressed down on him. His consciousness sought refuge in the fleeting tranquility of sleep, providing a temporary escape from the persistent discomfort. Yet, the blissful respite was abruptly interrupted as his eyes snapped open. Slowly extricating himself from his cramped spot, Raymond stood up. He furrowed his brow, acknowledging the lingering pain that clung to his every move. Nevertheless, determined, he pressed on, noting the faint light piercing through the dilapidated ceiling, revealing that the night had given way to a new day. Time to figure out where I am. With a sigh, he navigated his way out of the slums, the dilapidated structures grudgingly relinquishing their hold on him. Raymond emerged from the impoverished enclave and was met with an entirely different world. Towering structures loomed overhead, meticulously maintained in stark contrast to the ruins he had left behind in the slums. He pressed on, unperturbed, despite the pointed fingers and judgmental glances of passers-by. The worn state of his clothes betrayed his past life in the slums, branding him as a beggar. He harbored important questions about his location, eager to gather information. However, the people around him avoided him like a contagious disease. Guess it's time for a quick wardrobe upgrade and a wash. Raymond sighed, acknowledging the unspoken rejection, understanding his worn and dirty appearance didn't make the best first impression. Nevertheless, he marched forward until abruptly halting his steps, a frown etching itself onto his face. What the heck is a beggar doing here? An annoyed voice echoed across the street, piercing the air as a plump, middle-aged man adorned in luxurious clothes bellowed at Raymond, his fat finger pointing accusatorily. Curious onlookers turned their attention to the unfolding drama, pointing fingers of their own but making no move to intervene. It's just a show for them, hey. Raymond muttered under his breath. Maintaining a cold gaze with his crimson eyes, he casually observed a young lady, no older than 20, who mirrored the disdain in her eyes with a dismissive air. Unfazed by the confrontation, Raymond stood his ground. The well-dressed man, infuriated by the beggar's nonchalant demeanor, scowled and menacingly closed in on him. You beggar, this isn't your place. He shouted, his face inches away from Raymond's, who remained unfazed. As the middle-aged man prepared for another outburst, he was suddenly taken aback by the beggar's crimson eyes, sending shivers down his spine. Am I lacking some sleep? Dismissing the discomfort as a figment of his imagination, the well-dressed man's anger flared. He swung his arm with determination to aim for a sharp slap to the beggar's head. However, Raymond effortlessly evaded the strike with a slight movement, continuing to stride forward. With a light kick to the middle-aged man's foot, the well-dressed individual found himself stumbling. Wah! He widened his eyes with disbelief etched on his face as he crashed to the ground. My big baby! The young lady that was with him immediately panicked as she screamed like a banshee and went after the middle-aged man to help him get up. Observing the chaos, Raymond scoffed disdainfully, muttering, what a clown. The onlookers stood in stunned silence, their fingers still pointing at the unfolding scene, murmurs rippling through the street. Clearly, things weren't going as expected. Raymond continued his walk, eventually escaping the busy street. Once in a more secluded spot, he pulled out something from his pocket. Let's check if you've got some cash since I need some. With a smirk, he revealed a wallet that seemed to materialize in his hand after dealing with the middle-aged man. He was typically opposed to theft. But for such a clown? It was an exception. Chapter 4, Chapter 3, Republic of Padokia. Opening the wallet, Raymond discovered 5 pieces of paper labeled with 10,000. He furrowed his brow, muttering, is this supposed to be a lot or what? Shaking his head slightly, he contemplated that he had taken it from someone seemingly well off. It shouldn't be considered a small amount, right? Raymond recognized that the middle-aged man likely wasn't absurdly rich, given his arrogance and foolish behavior, which seemed at odds with the typical demeanor of the wealthy. However, he also considered the possibility that the man might be a second-generation rich individual, prone to flaunting their wealth. With those thoughts in the rear view, Raymond headed towards the city outskirts, seeking places where the less affluent families procured their necessities, spots where someone resembling a beggar wouldn't attract undue attention from security. Stumbling upon a boutique, Raymond entered, only to be met by a scrutinizing gaze from a lady who sized him up and down. She hesitantly spoke, hey there, sorry, but we're not running a free food program. A moment of silence ensued as their eyes locked, the lady growing uneasy under the intense scrutiny of Raymond's crimson eyes. Just as she prepared to speak again, Raymond intervened, placing a stack of 10,000 notes on the counter. He inquired, "What can I get with this? I practically sold my kidney for it." The unexpected revelation hung in the air, creating a moment of silence in the boutique. "Hey? Only 10,000 Jenny." The lady's complexion drained upon hearing the mention of a kidney from the little boy standing before her. A wave of sadness crept into her expression as she regarded Raymond. Observing her reaction, Raymond fell into silence once more, contemplating, "I guess 10,000 was too cheap for a kidney." His intention had been to divert suspicion from the stolen money by sharing a bizarre story. While he did take the money, keeping the lady from suspecting him seemed more convenient. "Maybe I rushed with the lies a bit," he mumbled, shaking his head at his own tactics. Still, Raymond's eyes sparked with interest upon hearing the currency name. He muttered, "Jenny? Sounds familiar." The lady sighed, kneeling down to meet Raymond at eye level. She smiled kindly, "Why don't you clean up first? You can pick any clothes you want from this store, on the house." Perhaps, the unexpected lie had worked in his favor after all? Raymond accepted the offer with an innocent smile, reminiscent of a child's, unknowingly evoking a deeper sense of sadness from the lady as she observed him. Raymond paid no mind to her melancholy, seeing it as an advantage. He made his way to the staff bathroom and washed away the grime clinging to him. As the dirt washed away, he began to feel human once again, the simple act of cleansing breathing a fresh life into him. Exiting the bathroom, towel in hand courtesy of the kind lady, Raymond discovered a set of clothes waiting for him. He took them and couldn't help but display an awkward expression as he caught sight of the tag price. "Just 2,700 for a shirt," he muttered, a blend of surprise and realization crossing his features. The realization dawned on him that 10,000 wasn't as much as he'd initially thought, considering the affordable clothes had such price tags. No wonder the lady had regarded him with pity, assuming he was selling his kidney for a meager sum equivalent to about $100 in his previous world. "Now, I kind of feel bad for lying." Raymond sighed before tearing off the tag and donning the clothes. As the fabric draped over him, he shed the remnants of his beggar appearance, fully transforming into a regular human being once again. Raymond encountered a mirror and couldn't resist stepping in front of it to inspect his new appearance. In the reflection, he saw a slender 12-year-old with dark hair. Despite his past as a beggar, Raymond noticed that his face seemed to be crafted to perfection, showcasing his most striking feature, his crimson eyes. Examining his own gaze, Raymond couldn't help but murmur, "My eyes stand out too much." Wary of drawing undue attention, he noted that most people in the city had more conventional eye colors, mainly brown or dark, much like the world he hailed from. Raymond couldn't shake the feeling that his striking crimson eyes might bring unwanted scrutiny in this unfamiliar place. "Oh, my! What a handsome little one you are!" An exclamation echoed through the air as Raymond turned to see the kind lady looking at him with captivated eyes as if discovering a gem that emerged from the dirt. Although feeling uncomfortable under her gaze, Raymond's expression shifted, and a realization dawned on him. He could use her to gather information. With his plan in motion, Raymond lingered in the store throughout the day. Surprisingly, he didn't spend a single penny. Tatiana, the kind lady who introduced herself, even treated him to meals. He eagerly devoured the food since his body craved the nourishment, and Tatiana, akin to a caring mother, happily provided more. They engaged in conversation, Tatiana enjoying watching him relish the food. However, as their talk concluded, Raymond couldn't resist blinking his eyes in surprise as he sought confirmation once more. "Did you just mention the Republic of Padokia?" "Yes, didn't you know your own country?" Tatiana tilted her head in confusion, then her expression shifted to sadness as she embraced Raymond, murmuring, "Oh, poor kid, you must have been through a lot." Though the warmth of Tatiana's passionate hug made him uncomfortable, Raymond's mind was in motion. Tatiana had mentioned the city being situated in the Republic of Padokia, and she spoke of a tower combat arena. An iconic place named Heaven's Arena. It was described as the world's most popular battle site, where victorious fighters ascended to higher floors as part of its reward system, located at the city's center. "Heaven's Arena," he silently mumbled, his expression contorting in disbelief. Raymond started to grasp the world he found himself in. From the moment he arrived in this world, he understood the need to take charge of his destiny. Raymond weighed his options in the world of Hunter x Hunter. He contemplated two paths. becoming formidable enough to command followers willingly or amassing wealth so great that others would be drawn to him like magnets. Yet, a greedy grin crept onto his face as he thought, why not both? However, he also knew that acquiring the funds necessary for such a venture would take time. And the thought of sharing ownership with investors didn't sit well with him. He preferred to maintain full control over his endeavors. I had considered starting small and sharing the profits, but perhaps I can skip that step here, he mused. A smirk tugged at the corners of his lips as he concluded, since I know just where to acquire the funds I need and to get stronger at the same time. Chapter 5, Chapter 4, Heaven's Arena. Raymond remained at Tatiana's place, utilizing her hospitality to gather essential information. Aware of Tatiana's limited knowledge, confined to her homeland, Raymond sought alternative sources. Do you know if there's a public library nearby? He inquired. Tatiana paused, her hand resting on her chin as she pondered. Suddenly, her eyes lit up with recognition. Ah, we don't have public libraries here, but there's a store down the street that sells affordable used books, she replied eagerly. Raymond nodded appreciatively, grateful for the lead Tatiana provided. Guess I'll head to that bookstore then, Raymond murmured, contemplating how far 10,000 Jenny could stretch. Tatiana chuckled, shaking her head. You might not need to spend anything. The owner's empathetic to those without resources, so he lets people read for free. Raymond's face lit up with gratitude, earning a gentle smile from Tatiana as he prepared to depart. Thanks, Tatiana. I'll make sure to come back soon. Take care, Raymond. Don't stay out too late, Tatiana said, her tone filled with maternal concern. Raymond felt a pang of warmth at Tatiana's motherly demeanor. Though initially found it surprising, he realized he didn't want to reject her kindness. With a nod, he replied, got it. See you soon. Exiting the quaint bookstore, Raymond caught snippets of conversation from a group of middle-aged ladies nearby. It's a shame, really. We had such high hopes for him, thinking he'd bring positive change to our community. Curious, Raymond discreetly eavesdropped as he continued on his way, hoping to glean some valuable information. It's such a pity his company went under. He was on the brink of success, but it all fell apart in the end. Raymond sighed, his mind swirling with thoughts as he reflected on the conversation he overheard. It's all too familiar, he muttered to himself, his brow furrowing in contemplation. Running a business is no easy feat. Keeping it afloat is a challenge in itself, let alone trying to grow it. He surmised that the individual mentioned must have faced difficulties, likely attempting to expand their business using a loan. It was a common strategy for business expansion, offering much-needed flexibility. Setting aside the fleeting thoughts, Raymond proceeded to the place Tatiana had recommended. Arriving at the small bookstore, Raymond was initially mistaken for a snack-hunting child by the owner since the store had been offering freebies to kids around the neighborhood. After clarifying his interest in books, Raymond perused the shelves but soon realized he couldn't decipher the unfamiliar script. Observing Raymond's struggle, the owner kindly stepped in and began teaching him the alphabet. He found the characters somewhat familiar, resembling those on Earth but with different symbols. Impressed by Raymond's swift comprehension, the owner watched in amazement as Raymond quickly memorized all the letters within just an hour. Marveling at his progress, the owner couldn't help but wonder if Raymond might be a genius as he observed him diligently practicing reading a book. With newfound literacy, Raymond initially struggled to read at a steady pace, taking his time to familiarize himself with the symbols. However, he soon found himself engrossed in the books, spending hours lost in their pages. The kind owner, impressed by Raymond's dedication and quick learning, allowed him to stay in the bookstore without charging him a single coin. Raymond felt grateful for the opportunity as he took note of the owner's face to make sure he paid back the favor. As the day drew to a close, the owner informed Raymond that it was time to close up shop. Reluctantly, Raymond asked if he could return the next day to continue his reading adventures. The owner happily agreed, beaming with pride at Raymond's enthusiasm. For the next 3 days, Raymond immersed himself in the world of books, devouring every page with gusto. With Tatiana's hospitality providing him a comfortable place to stay, Raymond spent his days expanding his knowledge. No mention of the Dark Continent or any hunter records among these pile of books, hey! Raymond murmured to himself as he wandered through the city streets while recalling everything he had read on that tiny store. Disappointed by the lack of relevant knowledge, Raymond found comfort in his newfound understanding of the world's basics. And with that knowledge came a spark of inspiration for potential business ventures, filling him with a sense of excitement that manifested in a wide smile as he wandered. Though he had told Tatiana he was just exploring the city, his true destination lay ahead as he arrived at the towering structure known as Heaven's Arena. Raymond couldn't help but grin as he gazed up at the imposing structure, dwarfing the surrounding skyscrapers. "So, this is Heaven's Arena," Raymond remarked, taking in the awe-inspiring sight before him. Walking on thin ice, hey! He thoroughly understood the perilous nature of his new reality. Aware of the dangers lurking in his new world, Raymond knew he needed strength and wealth to survive. Might as well dance on it, he mused, a crazed grin spreading across his face. With determination coursing through his veins, Raymond's excitement bubbled as he envisioned the path ahead. As he approached Heaven's Arena, he couldn't help but notice the long line of eager participants waiting for their chance to battle. Without hesitation, he joined the queue while silently observing the lines of people around him. He couldn't help but notice the curious glances thrown his way. It seemed he was the only participant of his age among a sea of adults, sparking whispers among the spectators. However, Raymond remained unfazed, maintaining his nonchalant demeanor as he patiently waited his turn. After nearly an hour of anticipation, Raymond finally reached the registration booth. A friendly attendant greeted him with a smile. "Hello there, how may I assist you?" Raymond stood on his tiptoes to meet her gaze. "I'd like to register as a fighter," he said confidently. Though surprised by Raymond's youthful appearance, the attendant remained professional. She handed him a form with a smile. "Certainly, please fill out this form," she instructed. Raymond nodded in understanding and carefully filled out the form, adapting to the unfamiliar symbols with ease. Once he completed the form, he handed it back to the attendant, who glanced over it before issuing him a badge number. 1102. With a surge of excitement coursing through him, Raymond followed the attendant's directions to one of the battle arenas inside the building. "Time to get stronger," he muttered to himself. Chapter 6, Chapter 5, Debut at the Heavens Arena. As Raymond and the attendant made their way to the battle arena, she took the time to explain the rules and prize money to him. "It's pretty straightforward," she remarked. The rules were simple. Weapons were prohibited on the first floors up to the 190s. Beyond that, there were no rules. Combatants could fight freely without any time limits, and a match ended when one fighter scored 10 points, resulting in a technical knockout or when there was a knockout. Scoring was based on hits. Clean hits were worth 1 point, while critical hits earned 2 points. Additionally, if a fighter was knocked down by their opponent's attack, it counted as a point for the attacker. However, the interesting part was the scoring of critical hits. Referees had their own personal styles when awarding critical hits, so whether a hit was considered critical or not depended entirely on the referee's judgment. The prizes varied depending on the floor levels. For the lower floors, up to 50, contestants won modest rewards like money for drinks. But as the floors climbed, so did the rewards. From floors 50 to 99, winners received a hefty sum of 50,000 jenny. Beyond that, the rewards skyrocketed. Floor 100 to 149 winners took home a whopping 1 million jenny, equivalent to $10,000 in Raymond's previous life. Floors 150 to 189 offered an even grander prize of 10 million jenny. The stakes rose dramatically on floor 190, with winners receiving a staggering 200 million jenny. Additionally, from the 100's floor, fighters were granted additional rewards such as private rooms. The revelation of the extravagant rewards left Raymond with a furrowed brow. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The sheer amount of money being thrown around hinted at a flawed banking system in this world. It dawned on him that rampant printing of money could lead to severe inflation, which likely contributed to the sprawling slums surrounding the city. "Getting rich won't solve much if the economy is this messed up," Raymond muttered in dismay. His thoughts then turned to the absence of a crucial rule, the death match. Recalling stories from his past life, Raymond remembered hearing about this rule in Heaven's Arena. As he cast a questioning glance at the attendant, Raymond couldn't shake the nagging feeling in his mind. Why wasn't the death match rule mentioned? Despite his curiosity, he noted the attendant's professionalism and decided to set the thought aside for the time being. His attention was quickly diverted as an announcement echoed through the arena. "Contestants number 1102 and 1150, please proceed to arena number 5. With a shrug, Raymond brushed off his concerns and headed towards the designated arena, ready to face whatever challenges awaited him. Though his body was still hurting from the whole fiasco a while back in the slum, Raymond could feel his body was a lot better, which he had considered as his young body that was used to such a harsh condition which granted him the ability to heal faster. As he approached the arena, he couldn't help but observe the other fighters who awaited their turn. Silently, he categorized them into three distinct groups. First, there were those who fought for fame, seeking recognition and adoration from the crowd. Then, there were those who fought solely to become stronger, driven by a relentless determination to improve themselves. And finally, there were those who fought out of desperation, their eyes betraying a sense of urgency born from their dire need for money. Raymond couldn't help but shake his head at the latter group, recognizing the folly in their decision to risk their lives for a chance at financial gain. Such a reckless choice, he muttered, feeling a pang of sympathy for those who had resorted to such desperate measures. As Raymond approached the arena, he sized up his opponent, a middle-aged man with disheveled hair and tattered clothing. The desperation in the man's eyes was palpable, yet there was also a glimmer of determination shining through. If only I had the funds, I could start over. This time, I'll do it properly. The man muttered to himself, his voice carrying a mix of desperation and resolve. Raymond raised an eyebrow, intrigued by the man's unwavering sense of purpose despite his dire circumstances. It was uncommon to encounter such determination in someone facing such desperation. When the man noticed his opponent was just a 12-year-old kid, his mutterings ceased abruptly, replaced by a deep frown. "Why am I fighting a kid?" Raymond remained unfazed, his demeanor calm and collected, which only seemed to deepen the man's scowl. "Do you even understand where you are, brat?" The man challenged, his tone laced with irritation. Raymond met his gaze squarely, his crimson eyes piercing. "I do. How about you?" He replied nonchalantly, a hint of seriousness in his voice. "Do you understand where you are?" "Hey!" The man faltered, taken aback by the sharpness in Raymond's gaze. He began to realize that this kid was no ordinary opponent. "All right, you asked for it then? I'll give you a beating you won't forget," the man threatened, attempting to regain his bravado. "I'll beat you so hard, you'll feel it in your parents' place. I'm an orphan." Silence fell between them as the man processed Raymond's words, realizing he had been outwitted by a mere child. He begrudgingly acknowledged that this kid was playing him like a fiddle, that annoying smirk a clear indication of his amusement. The referee enjoyed the brief banter between the fighters before clearing his throat and calling out, "All right, both of you ready?" With nods from both combatants, he declared, "Then fight." The man assumed a rough stance, looking rather unkempt to Raymond's discerning eyes. He shook his head at the man's lack of finesse. Observing Raymond's relaxed posture, the man felt a surge of irritation, convinced the kid was mocking him. He closed the distance between them swiftly, preparing to deliver a blow. "I'll go easy on you, brat," he sneered. Raymond flashed a knowing smile, and as the man lunged forward to grab him, Raymond smoothly evaded his grasp. The man's eyes widened in disbelief at the kid's agility. "Consider this a favor from me." Raymond's voice rang out moments before his fist connected with the man's chin, sending him crashing to the ground. As the man's vision blurred and darkness crept in, he cursed under his breath. "Who calls this a fucking favor?" he muttered. Chapter 7, Chapter 6, Unbroken Resolve. As Raymond prepared to exit the arena, the referee's voice rang out, 2 points for a critical hit. Raymond turned, eyebrows raised in surprise. He watched as the man struggled to rise, his determination evident despite his shaky stance. The man muttered to himself, "I can't go down now, not now." His words were like a broken record, repeating his resolve to keep fighting despite the odds. He fought against his own body's instinct to surrender, pushing through the pain and dizziness. With blurred vision and a pounding headache, he gritted his teeth and forced himself to remain standing, fueled by sheer willpower alone. Raymond watched in astonishment as the man defied his body's limitations, refusing to give up. As Raymond observed the man's determined struggle, he couldn't help but wonder about the reasons behind such fierce determination. His gaze was sharp, his aura was pretty sharp too, and he didn't seem like a stupid guy, Raymond thought, recalling his earlier observations. Curiosity bubbling, Raymond couldn't resist asking, "You? Why do you fight?" Initially confused by the question, the man burst into a hearty, almost maniacal laugh before answering, "Why? Of course. To get enough money to start it over. My business empire. Oh. My company might have gone under, and I've been completely in debt, but with Heaven's Arena, I could start it over." Raymond's smirk widened as he remembered the gossip he overheard in Tatiana's store. "What a strange coincidence," Raymond mused, shaking his head. "Let's see if your willpower is strong enough to back up your words." With ease, Raymond evaded every attack the man threw at him, effortlessly delivering blows of his own. He chuckled as he landed a kick to the man's guts, followed by a powerful punch to his face, sending him crashing to the ground once more. Despite the relentless beating, the man refused to stay down. Raymond maintained his calm demeanor throughout the one-sided fight, landing blow after blow until the referee called out, "Critical hits. 3 points." Realizing he had already accumulated 9 points, Raymond couldn't help but laugh at the man's persistence as he struggled to rise once again. Despite his battered appearance, Raymond could see the determination gleaming in the man's eyes. "This guy," Raymond murmured as he slowly approached the man. For the first time in the fight, Raymond took the initiative to move forward, a smirk playing on his adorable yet strangely demonic appearance. "You, what's your name?" I am Luke." "Luke? Good, be my slave." "Pardon." Raymond shook his head at Luke's confused expression. "I said, work for me." "You definitely didn't say that." Ignoring Luke's attempt to clarify, Raymond swiftly delivered a fist to his face, prompting a stream of curses. "You crazy motherfucker." As Luke's consciousness faded, Raymond chuckled at the sight of Luke lying unconscious on the ground. And so began Raymond's alliance with Luke, a key figure in his pursuit of success. After their encounter in the arena, Raymond was awarded a ticket to ascend to the 50th floor, bringing Luke's unconscious form with him. When Luke regained consciousness, he was startled to find Raymond looming over him, and his initial reaction was to scream in horror. It seemed like his worst nightmare had come to life before his eyes. As Raymond questioned Luke about his background and experience, he discovered that Luke's business ventures bore a striking resemblance to the Amazon venture led by Zev Basaz in Raymond's previous life. Realizing the potential synergy between their goals, Raymond proposed a partnership, offering to provide the necessary funds in exchange for a 70% stake in Luke's company. He planned to transfer this ownership to a holding company he would establish in the future. Although Luke wasn't particularly concerned about Raymond's age, he harbored doubts about Raymond's ability to secure the funds needed for their venture. As Raymond ascended the ranks of Heaven's arena, swiftly reaching the 150s after a few days, Luke's doubts began to dissipate. The young fighter's effortless progress left an indelible impression, and even when offered a ticket to the 190s, Raymond chose to remain in the 150s. Luke, curious about Raymond's intentions, couldn't quite grasp the reason behind this decision. However, Raymond, unfazed by others' speculations, was engrossed in his own observations. Surveying his body, aching yet resilient, Raymond marveled at its rapid adaptation to his movements. The strength residing within his youthful yet malnourished frame exceeded the norm for someone of his age in his previous life. This realization illuminated the power dynamics of the new world he found himself in, sparking a crazed grin on his face. "This world truly is a blessing," Raymond murmured to himself, his eyes alight with determination. With his revised plan in mind, Raymond dedicated himself to refining his combat skills, engaging in countless battles within the confines of Heaven's arena. His young body adapted at an astonishing rate, progressing in ways unimaginable in his former life. Over the span of a year, Raymond's physique underwent a remarkable transformation. What was once a small frame now brimmed with strength and vitality. As Raymond continued to spar with a myriad of opponents, each wielding unique combat techniques, he honed his own skills to perfection. The experience garnered from these battles proved invaluable, shaping him into a formidable fighter. With the earnings amassed from his victories in Heaven's arena, Raymond finally had the means to embark on his first business venture alongside Luke. Under Raymond's keen supervision, the business venture flourished beyond Luke's wildest expectations. Raymond's astute understanding of the industry, coupled with his innovative ideas, often left Luke in awe. Rather than feeling overshadowed, Luke found himself grateful for Raymond's guidance, which solidified the hierarchy between them without any resistance from Luke. Gone was Raymond's malnourished appearance, replaced by a healthier demeanor as he indulged in better meals with the newfound wealth. Though Raymond continued to reside at Tatiana's place, his involvement in the business remained hidden from her. Despite Tatiana's occasional suspicions, she dismissed them as mere antics of a typical child, oblivious to the intricate dealings unfolding behind the scenes. Raymond's physical prowess underwent a remarkable transformation over the course of the year. Each day, his body endured the strain of intense training, leaving him perpetually sore. Yet, unlike in his previous life, where rest was deemed essential for muscle recovery, Raymond discovered that his body adapted differently in this world. Amazed by this newfound resilience, Raymond pushed himself relentlessly, never once taking a day off. The relentless pursuit of strength consumed him, driving him to his limits day after day. Beside him, Luke watched in awe and trepidation at Raymond's unwavering determination. Despite the initial shock of witnessing such fervor in a young boy, Luke found himself filled with newfound confidence. This kid is literally my golden ticket. With Raymond by his side, he believed he could reach heights he never thought possible. Chapter 8, Chapter 7, Ascending to the 200th Floor. As Raymond delved deeper into his quest for strength, 2 years slipped by like grains of sand through an hourglass. This year was 1990, he found himself scouring the streets for any sign of the main characters from the original story. However, his search yielded no results, indicating that he was still far from the events of the original plot. Despite the uncertainty surrounding the timeline, Raymond remained vigilant, keeping a close eye on the nearby Zaldik family. He also instructed Luke to monitor any news about the Hunter exam. In the meantime, his relentless dedication earned him the moniker of Crazed Battle Maniac among the denizens of the 190s. It was no secret that Raymond deliberately chose to remain in this tier, honing his skills to perfection. Meanwhile, Tatiana's suspicion regarding Raymond's activities continued to grow. Yet, Raymond adeptly deflected her inquiries by mentioning his acquaintance with Luke, a familiar face from their neighborhood. This explanation seemed to placate Tatiana's concerns, at least for the time being. In the midst of his training, Raymond also took the time to immerse himself in the complexities of the country's political landscape, familiarizing himself with tax laws and regulations. Armed with this knowledge, he became instrumental in helping Tatiana's small business thrive, shielding it from the clutches of government exploitation. Luke had gone above and beyond for Raymond, even arranging for his identification. Once a beggar with no official papers, Luke had managed to get Raymond listed as a 15-year-old this year. In the Republic of Padokia, the legal age was 16. With his legal age on the horizon, Raymond focused on refining his business plan. Their business, aptly named Amazing, was modeled after Zev Basaz's Amazing from Raymond's previous life. Over the past 3 years, Amazing had flourished, expanding its operations to cover the entire Republic of Padokia. Raymond also urged Luke to establish a logistics company, which they named Fed Up. This decision was aimed to attract more customers to Amazing by offering free delivery services. With their own logistics company in place, they could not only grow their customer base but also manage losses more effectively. Despite Luke's initial shock at Raymond's aggressive approach, he couldn't deny the nationwide attention that Amazing had garnered under Raymond's unconventional strategy. Although Raymond had achieved remarkable progress in both business and personal strength, even with his newfound strength surpassing his peak from his previous life, Raymond still lacked the essential knowledge of Nen. Luke's attempts to get his hand at the information only got him to secure only a basic introduction to Nen, covering just the fundamentals and leaving out the crucial details of unlocking one's potential. Raymond hesitated to hire a hunter for personalized instruction. He was wary of attracting attention too soon, preferring to stay under the radar until he had sufficient forces at his disposal. Raymond sat in his private room at the Heavens Arena, poring over the information with a furrowed brow. "So, this is all we could gather?" he asked, disappointment evident in his voice. "It seems like the Hunter Association has locked down everything tightly, leaving us with just these morsels of information." Luke sighed, shaking his head in resignation. Despite his initial appearance as a downtrodden beggar, Luke had transformed into a confident middle-aged man, radiating authority and competence. Yet, there was an undeniable irony in the scene. A middle-aged man reporting to a youthful teenager, who seemed to hold all the cards despite his tender age and striking appearance. Raymond sifted through the documents in his hand, absorbing the contents within a few seconds. The papers contained an introduction to a mysterious technique known as Nen. In simple terms, Nen allowed individuals to harness and manipulate their life energy, also known as aura. It was a versatile skill that enabled users to manifest their imagination into reality, granting them superhuman abilities. To master Nen, one needed to grasp the 4 fundamental principles. 10. The ability to control one's aura. Zetsu, the art of suppressing aura to remain undetected. Ren, the technique of amplifying one's aura to its fullest potential. Hatsu, a unique specialization that varied from person to person. The documents hinted at the existence of various Nen classifications, each accompanied by its own set of advanced techniques and abilities. Yet, it didn't mention anything about how to unlock his Nen or anything related to the method of opening one. "It seems I've hit a wall. I need someone to show me the way." Raymond set aside the documents, his expression filled with determination. He shook his head at the thought of taking the Hunter exam to unravel the mysteries of Nen. A reluctance to reveal himself to the association and a pressing need for haste completely ruled out that option. Luke's eyes widened in surprise at Raymond's revelation. He had heard whispers about the secrets concealed on the 200th floor of the Heavens Arena, and Raymond's previous reluctance to ascend had made him take the rumors seriously. Now, it seemed there was no choice but to confront them head-on. "You're really going up there?" Luke asked incredulously. Raymond nodded firmly, "Yes, I have to. There's something I need to discover." Luke was adamantly against his decision, but his decision was resolute as he made his way up toward the 200s. Yet Raymond's decision was final and Luke had no other choice but to wish him good luck. As Raymond ascended to the 200th floor, the referee, baffled by his sudden change of heart, handed him the ticket with an excitement. Stepping into the corridor of the 200s, Raymond headed towards the registration office for his upcoming fight. To his surprise, a group of individuals with a formidable aura awaited him at the corridor's end. Raymond's expression sharpened, recognizing that these were no ordinary fighters. Yet, instead of hostility, they greeted him warmly, "Ah, hello there. You must be the famous crazed battle maniac we've been hearing about so often." Raymond surveyed each of them, recognizing faces from the lower floors. However, he couldn't recall facing them directly, indicating they had navigated their own trials through the 190s by different fighters. Amidst the assembly, a blonde individual caught Raymond's attention as he approached with deliberate poise, heralding the onset of a confrontation fraught with anticipation. Chapter 9, Chapter 8, Awakening. "Hey, Raymond. You might not remember me, but you gave me a good beating a while back." A blonde man approached him and extended his hand with a friendly smile. Raymond recalled the unspoken rule against using none on ordinary fighters below the 190th floor, which had driven him to aggressively hone his technique without caring much about offending anyone. However, he knew that rule didn't apply here on the 200th floor. With caution, he subtly adjusted his stance, prepared to defend himself if needed, as he warily accepted the handshake. Much to Raymond's surprise, the handshake turned out to be a regular one. Yet, as he turned to face the group, their bright smiles immediately set off alarm bells in his mind. In the blink of an eye, their smiles widened, triggering an instinctive reaction within Raymond. With lightning reflexes, he propelled himself backward, just as his senses detected a subtle shift in the air. Whirling around, he caught sight of the blonde man who had extended a handshake moments ago, now poised to tap his shoulder. An illusion. Raymond's inner monologue echoed with disbelief as the blonde figure dissolved into thin air, leaving behind the one who had nearly made contact. Before Raymond could fully grasp the situation, a sharp pain shot through his arm, causing him to grimace. Examining his shoulder, he realized it had been dislocated by an invisible force. Is that his ability? Raymond pondered aloud, struck by the unexpected turn of events. "Oh? Impressive, reacting even while I'm using Zetsu," remarked the blonde man, his tone laced with amusement. "And you're familiar with Nen too, it seems." A chuckle escaped Jack's lips as he observed Raymond's response. Meanwhile, the once friendly demeanor of the group had soured, replaced by sneers aimed squarely at Raymond. "Jack, I must say, I expected more. How did you manage to botch such a simple task? What a letdown." Their derision cut through the air, directed at Jack, whose true identity finally clicked in Raymond's mind. Memories flooded back, reminding him of a past victory over someone Jack the Assassin back in the 150s. A bead of sweat trickled down Raymond's brow, his crimson gaze locked onto the group before him. Their chuckles only intensified his unease. "If he'd touched me there, it wouldn't have just been a dislocation," Raymond thought grimly, realizing the gravity of his narrow escape. "Haha, relax, everyone. It's all under control." Minen made contact, Jack's words dripped with malice, sending a chill down Raymond's spine. His companions smirked knowingly, their eyes fixed on Raymond's trembling form as his aura surged uncontrollably. Yet, Raymond ignored their conversation, consumed by the sensation of an invisible appendage sprouting from his being. The overwhelming aura enveloping him drowned out all else, leaving him grappling with its strangely comfortable yet unfamiliar presence. "I wager 2 million he won't make it." "And how long do you give him?" "Only a few minutes, tops." The venomous words exchanged amongst the group pierced Raymond's consciousness, igniting a fire within him. How could they speak of his life with such callous disregard? With a fierce gleam in his crimson eyes, Raymond unleashed his Nen, the energy pulsating around him in a radiant aura. The sudden display prompted an immediate reaction from the group, their expressions shifting sharply as they swiftly encased themselves in their own Nen defenses. What in the world? Ren! This guy's insane! Who in their right mind would unleash their Nen like that? Is he asking to get killed? Ordinarily, mastering 10 was the next step after successfully opening one's aura nodes. It involved training the body to regulate the flow of aura while keeping the nodes open, preventing aura leakage. Yet, Raymond had defied convention by unleashing his Nen in a reckless display. As his Nen surged with an ominous bloodlust, the group's eyes widened in horror. A death wish? Perhaps you're the ones who should be worrying about that. Raymond's voice cut through the tense silence like ice. The group could sense Raymond's Nen pulsating with an almost boundless energy, sending a shiver down their spines. They realized, with a sinking feeling, that they may have underestimated their opponent. Shouldn't he have exhausted his aura by now if he let it out like that? One of them muttered, his voice tinged with uncertainty. Against all expectations, Raymond abruptly retracted his Nen, drawing it back within himself with a single, controlled breath as he attempted to quell the raging storm of his emotions. In the ensuing silence, Raymond's efforts to harness his Nen became evident. Despite his initial clumsiness, the group watched in awe as Raymond gradually gained mastery over his abilities. Then, after controlling his Nen as he stopped it from going away from his body, Raymond looked over toward the group as he forced his dislocated shoulder back into place with his other hand as a sharp pang shot through his body. The sight caused everyone to flinch visibly, yet Raymond's expression remained stoic, unaffected by the pain coursing through him. A blessing in disguise, indeed, Raymond mused inwardly, pushing through the tearing pain in his shoulder. He had anticipated forcibly unlocking his Nen by exposing himself to someone with the ability, but he never expected to be greeted with it right away. It had caught him completely off guard. An average martial artist might not have had the time to control it before their aura depleted entirely, resulting in a grim end. But Raymond's familiarity with controlling his body, down to every muscle and thought, proved to be his saving grace. As he grew accustomed to the invisible limb, instinct guided him in mastering its control with surprising ease. Still, Raymond acknowledged the necessity of further training to enhance his control over his aura. It seems my debut is set to make quite an impression this time. With a cold gaze, he surveyed the group, committing each member's face to memory as he spoke with quiet determination. Raymond was wary of causing undue chaos or drawing too much attention in Heaven's arena, mindful of the Hunter Association's watchful eyes. However, he refused to let their malice go unchecked. Raymond's piercing gaze seemed to prick at their pride, fueling a simmering resentment within the group. Despite benefiting from their greeting, Raymond's apparent ease had wounded their egos. However, they were no ordinary fighters. Raymond's seemingly boundless Nen had caught them off guard, but they were not ones to back down. They brimmed with pride, confidence, and an unshakable belief in their own abilities. A clash between them became inevitable. That year, Raymond earned himself a fearsome new moniker: the Crazed Battle God. Throughout the first 9 rounds of his debut, he emerged victorious, leaving a trail of defeated opponents in his wake. However, it was not just victory he sought. In a startling turn of events, Raymond unleashed a ruthlessness that shook the very foundations of Heaven's arena. His opponents fell not just defeated but lifeless, instilling fear in those in the 200s and making them refuse to register themselves for a fight. The chaos he wrought forced Heaven's arena to institute a ban on death matches without consent from both parties. And just as suddenly as he had appeared, Raymond vanished from the arena, leaving behind a legacy that would endure. His legend persisted, immortalized by his unprecedented impact on combat rules. Chapter 10, Chapter 9, Boundless Ambition. Upon hearing the news, Luke's expression twisted in shock and concern. He immediately inquired if Raymond had sustained any injuries, disregarding that Raymond had just dispatched 9 opponents in a row. A smile tugged at Raymond's lips as he observed Luke's reaction, reaffirming his choice to select Luke as his trusted confidant. In a world as chaotic as theirs, softness had no place. Raymond needed strong, principled individuals by his side, and Luke fit the bill perfectly. Despite his burning desire to continue refining his combat techniques within in Heaven's arena, Raymond understood the importance of laying low for the time being. The chaos he had stirred within Heaven's arena far outweighed any benefits he might gain from staying. Although he was certain that the Hunter Association had already taken notice of him following the incident, Raymond remained unfazed. He knew they would merely keep him under observation to gauge his intentions. Once I've amassed enough power, such scrutiny will be irrelevant, Raymond muttered to himself as he strode away from the arena with a determined resolve. Going back to his Nen training, while meditation was the preferred method for many, Raymond found solace and clarity in a different practice. Unlike most individuals, Raymond's mind operated on a unique wavelength. Rather than quieting his thoughts through traditional meditation, he found clarity in active contemplation. Thus, he devised his own form of meditation, which involved harnessing his Nen which a chess. As he moved the pieces across the board with precision while circulating his Nen throughout his body, Raymond not only sharpened his mental faculties but also deepened his mastery over Nen. In this unconventional practice, he found a path to both inner peace and martial prowess. So, you're telling me money alone won't cut it? Luke's frustration reverberated through his voice as he sank into the plush sofa, while Raymond occupied the desk. Raymond nodded, his gaze fixed on the scene outside the window. Seated in the private meeting room of Amazing's headquarters, Raymond and Luke engaged in a candid discussion. Despite Luke's apparent indifference to his influence over the country since all he wanted was money, Raymond had long understood that his ambitions extended far beyond mere riches. Especially with recent events, such as the attack on one of their branches by unidentified assailants, crystallized Raymond's realization that to expand their influence beyond the borders of the Republic of Padokia, they needed more than just wealth. They needed power, their own force to protect their interests and assert their dominance. Don't fret, Luke. I'll handle this personally, Raymond assured, his voice carrying an air of determination. He then pivoted to face Luke, his expression serious. Your focus should be on ensuring our business runs smoothly. Luke rubbed his temples wearily, feeling a wave of exhaustion wash over him. He had thought he understood Raymond, but the young man's ambitions seemed to exceed his wildest expectations. Are you aiming for the entire country now? You've already got money, so what more could you want? Influence? Power? Luke questioned, his frustration evident. A light chuckle escaped Raymond's lips at Luke's reaction. His gaze drifted to a book resting nearby, its title catching his eye. The Unknown Land of the Dark Continent. Turning back to Luke, Raymond's crimson eyes gleamed with determination as he declared, just the country is too small. I want the whole world. Wah! Luke's jaw dropped in disbelief, his mind struggling to comprehend the audacity of Raymond's ambition. He ran his hand through his hair in frustration, cursing under his breath, you insane bastard. I always knew you were a few screws loose, but this? The entire continent. Raymond chuckled softly at Luke's outburst, allowing him to misconstrue his intentions. With his grand ambitions in mind, Raymond bid farewell to Tatiana, whom he now regarded as part of his extended family. Although Luke and Tatiana seemed to be growing closer, Raymond chose to overlook it. He trusted Luke not to mistreat her as their relationship evolved. Explaining that it was time for him to gain more experience under Luke's guidance, Tatiana reluctantly agreed. Raymond couldn't help but notice that it was Luke who seemed to persuade Tatiana more effectively, earning him a sidelong glance from Raymond. Caught in his embarrassment, Luke quickly averted his gaze, while Tatiana blushed beside him. Raymond found himself at a loss for words in the situation. Despite their age difference, Tatiana being 27 and Luke around 32, he reasoned that they should be fine together. He shook his head, deciding to let them be. As long as Tatiana was happy, he didn't mind. So, where exactly are we headed to build our force? Luke inquired from the passenger seat, leaving the direction entirely in Raymond's hands as he instructed the driver to follow Raymond's direction. As they cruised along the road, the car gradually approached the outskirts of the city, nearing the dilapidated slum area. Luke furrowed his brow, sensing something amiss. Could you please explain this? Raymond merely smirked, stepping out of the car with purpose. He instructed the driver to ensure Luke's safe return later before turning to face the slums. This is where we'll gather our force, Luke, Raymond declared confidently. Surely not here, right? Luke's disbelief was palpable as Raymond cast a determined gaze upon the rundown streets of the slum. Why not? Do you know who the most ambitious people in the world are? Luke remained silent, caught off guard by Raymond's question. It's these beggars. They possess an insatiable thirst for what they want. They'll stop at nothing to achieve it. Not waiting for a response, Raymond smirked knowingly. They're driven by desperation. And do you know what they wanted? They just wanted to survive another day, Raymond declared, his smirk widening. And it was true. These resilient beggars, whom Raymond had observed closely, were fueled by a relentless determination to survive. They could endure weeks of fasting, subsisting on mere scraps to prolong their existence. Raymond possessed first-hand knowledge of the beggars' relentless drive because he himself once walked among them, living the harsh reality of survival on the streets. But why would he seek to recruit them into his fold? To achieve his ambition, loyalty from his men held the utmost importance, and he found these individuals to be not only the most resilient but also possess a straightforward goal. And their unwavering ambition, albeit for mere survival, mirrored the determination he sought in his subordinates. I suppose inhabiting this body was a stroke of luck, allowing me to discover the existence of these individuals, Raymond mused as he strode confidently forward. With a final farewell to Luke, who could only shake his head in weariness, Raymond continued on his path. Luke understood that Raymond was a man with clear objectives and trusted him to pursue his goals without hesitation. Chapter 11, Chapter 10, Brick by Brick. Over the course of 2 years, Raymond dedicated himself to scouting resilient beggars, each possessing an indomitable will to survive and bringing them into his fold. The gradual process involved training them in the basics of physical conditioning and providing them with nourishment to restore their malnourished bodies. Raymond took a hands-on approach, personally overseeing their training while delegating miscellaneous tasks to the subordinates provided by Luke. Many of the recruits were familiar faces from Raymond's time on the streets, making it easier for him to earn their loyalty. The initial group of recruits held immense significance in Raymond's master plan. He invested an entire year, molding them into formidable fighters. Instead of traditional instruction, Raymond chose a more immersive method, engaging them in sparring sessions where they honed their skills through hands-on experience. As they gradually developed their own unique fighting styles, Raymond provided guidance and pointers to help them refine their techniques. Their rapid progress brought him immense satisfaction, knowing they had evolved into fully fledged fighters capable of holding their own in the 190s of Heaven's arena. But perhaps most importantly, their unwavering loyalty to Raymond stemmed from the fulfillment of their desires. He had given them purpose and opportunity. In return, they pledged their allegiance to him without hesitation. Over the span of 2 years, as he reached the legal age, Raymond established a holding company known as Celestia Consortium, adopting the surname Celestia for himself. Under this umbrella, he consolidated Amazing, Fed Up, and Tatiana's small business, rebranding the latter as Louis Vuitton, specializing in custom-made clothing for the affluent. Though their operations were confined to the Republic of Padokia, Raymond's ambitions stretched far beyond. Understanding this, Luke tirelessly traversed the country, bolstering political alliances and forging connections to expand their influence. While Raymond recognized the importance of these endeavors, he knew they needed more than mere connections to solidify their power. Hence, he made a decisive move and acquired a security company, christening it Celestial Force, and enlisted his trained recruits as security personnel under its banner. Despite the progress made with his current force, Raymond understood that it was still insufficient. He traversed the country for another year, recruiting beggars who met his stringent criteria. With his newly trained fighters by his side, Raymond's task became more manageable and efficient. By the year's end, his influence extended across the entire nation. However, he exercised caution, refraining from immediately uprooting these recruits from their slum dwellings to avoid drawing attention. Instead, he strategically deployed his men to oversee each slum, effectively creating a vast network of information-gathering operatives. This gave him eyes and ears in every corner of the country, bolstering his intelligence-gathering capabilities. However, he recognized that this network primarily covered individuals from medium to low social standings. Understanding the need to extend his influence to higher echelons of society, Raymond devised a new plan. He gradually erected high-end bars and gambling dens, exclusively for the elite, all under the jurisdiction of Celestial Force. Armed with his formidable force, Raymond began to extend his influence into neighboring countries. He established yet another company, Samsung, under the Celestia Consortium umbrella. Samsung specialized in consumer electronics manufacturing, leveraging Raymond's knowledge from his previous life to introduce renowned designs into this new world. Over the next 5 years, Samsung's products gradually permeated the market, replacing outdated appliances and gadgets with their sleek, innovative designs. Consumers eagerly embraced Samsung's offerings, ordering them through Amazing and having them delivered via Fed Up. Even the affluent indulged in luxury clothing from Louis Vuitton, with deliveries efficiently handled by Fed Up. Over the past 5 years, Raymond had entrusted his most loyal subordinates with the task of acquiring knowledge of Nen, a mysterious power that few understood. Gradually, Celestial Force transformed into a security company, with the majority of its bodyguards possessing proficiency in Nen, enhancing their effectiveness and further solidifying Raymond's dominance. As rumors of Raymond's burgeoning influence circulated, a sense of alarm swept through many circles. Yet, by the time they realized the extent of Raymond's power, it was already too late. Unbeknownst to them, they had unwittingly become pawns in Raymond's grand scheme. His vast network of information-gathering operatives had brought every powerful figure to their knees. Now, those in positions of power understood that to maintain their status or ascend to greater heights, they had no choice but to align themselves with the Celestia Consortium. During this time, a joyous event occurred as Luke and Tatiana officially tied the knot, marking the beginning of their married life together. Their wedding was a spectacle of grand proportions, attracting guests from far and wide who sought to curry favor with Luke, now hailed as the wealthiest man in existence. Yet, beneath the surface of the celebration, many attendees were aware that their true aim was to curry favor with Raymond, the true powerhouse behind the scenes. Raymond couldn't help but smile as he reminisced about when Luke achieved this remarkable feat, becoming the richest man on the entire continent. "Raymond, look at this. I'm now the richest man on the continent," Luke exclaimed gleefully, brandishing a newspaper with his name emblazoned on the headline. Raymond chuckled in response, "Congratulations, Luke. Being the richest man on Earth is quite the achievement." However, Luke's elation quickly faded as he remembered that Raymond owned a significant 70% share of his company. "Never mind, I forgot who I was talking to." With a sigh, Luke shook his head. Raymond simply shook his head in response. In the room, a middle-aged man with a stern countenance approached Raymond, his expression grave as he whispered something into Raymond's ear. Raymond nodded in response, bidding farewell to Luke as he turned his attention to the middle-aged man. This man was none other than the head of Celestial Force, a former beggar whom Raymond had discovered in Meteor City several years prior. Initially hesitant due to the man's already proficient Nen abilities, Raymond extended a hand of help to him on his deathbed, earning his unwavering loyalty in return. Surprisingly, it was this middle-aged man who imparted advanced knowledge of Nen to Raymond, who absorbed it eagerly like a sponge, much to the man's astonishment. Recognizing his competence in leading and managing their team, Raymond appointed him as the head of Celestial Force, granting him full authority to oversee the training of Nen within their company. In the underworld, he was feared and respected as the Ice Emperor, Sakujiro. Chapter 12, Character's Image. I will upload the pictures after resizing all of them to fit the requirements. At the heart of our story stands Raymond Celestia, our main protagonist, who is ambitious and determined. Tatiana was a kind-hearted lady who helped Raymond when he needed it the most. Once a bankrupt businessman, Luke finds his fortunes reversed thanks to Raymond's intervention, becoming a key ally in Raymond's endeavors. And then there's Sakujiro, Raymond's steadfast subordinate and the epitome of strength within his ranks, loyal to the core and fiercely devoted to his leader. Chapter 13, Chapter 11, Hunting Azaldique. Raymond stood atop a skyscraper, his gaze fixated on the city's nocturnal panorama spread out below. The twinkling lights and bustling activity of the nightlife painted a mesmerizing scene. A year had passed since then, and Raymond, now 24, found himself reflecting on the lack of significant progress in the past year. Despite this, he had diligently worked on consolidating his power. The main obstacle in his path was the formidable Hunter Association, a force far greater than he had initially anticipated. Recognizing the scale of his adversary, Raymond adjusted his tactics, dispatching his trusted men to infiltrate the association's ranks. Beneath the dim illumination of the night sky, Raymond's eyes shimmered with a crimson hue, their intensity seeming to penetrate the distance between the skyscraper and the bustling city below. Even from high above, observing the activities on the ground, he chuckled as if he had just witnessed an amusing interaction on this busy night. Different from his previous life where he reincarnated as a baby, this time, he found himself in the body of a street beggar kid 12 years ago. 12 years had passed since he arrived in this world. However, as soon as he sifted through the files on his desk, the door to his office swung open forcefully, and a middle-aged man in his 30s entered with a solemn expression. Observing the middle-aged man's demeanor, Raymond furrowed his brow and asked, "Sakujiro, hey? Is something wrong?" Sakujiro nodded. "Albert was killed. Do you know who did it?" Raymond sighed upon hearing the report, massaging his temple slightly. Albert was his representative in this city, which was essential for his plan to succeed. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that Albert's existence was akin to a crucial support for navigating the city. "We haven't found out who did it yet, but we've apprehended someone we believe is a scout for the person responsible for Albert's death." Sakujiro shook his head slightly while delivering the report. Raymond stood and said, "Let's see the scout." Sakujiro nodded, and they left the room, making their way to the lift. Entering the lift, Sakujiro didn't simply press a button to select a floor. Instead, he expertly pressed a sequence of buttons, revealing it to be some sort of coded entry for their underground base. Raymond stood by patiently, observing the intricate process. With the completion of the coded sequence, the lift began its descent. Ding! The lift chimed as it reached the underground level, opening up to expose a dimly lit corridor with various rooms on either side. They strolled through the corridor until reaching a room with glass partitions, witnessing one of their men confronting someone they suspected to be the scout. "Have mercy, please." The scout pleaded desperately, his entire body battered and in a wretched state after enduring brutal torture. "Spill it. Who's behind these needles?" Their subordinate thrust the needles before the scout, causing his eyes to widen in terror. Despite this, he kept his lips sealed, prompting their subordinate to persist in the relentless beating. "What are those needles?" Raymond inquired, detecting a hint of a familiar, lingering energy within the needles. "None user, hey." However, Sakujiro nodded his head slightly. "It's likely the murder weapon found on Albert's lifeless body." "I understand." Raymond sighed, then entered the room. Detecting an incoming presence, the subordinate furrowed his brows, turning to identify the newcomer. Recognizing his boss, he quickly softened his expression, offering a respectful bow before stepping away from the battered scout. The sudden departure of the man who had been subjecting him to torture made the scout turn. As Raymond approached, the scout couldn't help but plead once again, his voice filled with desperation, "Please, spare me." The room felt heavy with tension, a mix of fear, confusion, and a desperate plea for mercy hanging in the air. But Raymond just coldly glared down at the scout with his crimson eyes. He kneeled down and grabbed the scout by the neck, causing him to groan in pain. "Unfortunately, you're not saying what you're supposed to say," he whispered into the scout's ear, sending shivers down the scout's spine. The scout realized he was in a tight spot, caught by someone ruthless, and his mind went blank. The other guy in the room got what was going to happen and quietly closed the door. Before long, the room echoed with the pained voice of the scout. The sounds of desperation continued until the Sakujiro firmly shut the door, leaving an eerie silence behind. Please, kill me." Raymond's lips curled into a sinister smile as the scout pleaded for an end. He applauded mockingly, "Now, you're saying the correct words. Well done." The scout continued to beg like a broken doll, and Raymond turned to his subordinate, who watched in awe. "Get the information we needed," Raymond stated before he strolled out of the room, leaving behind a parting command, "and grant him the death he so desires afterward." Exiting the room, Raymond entered another space with grey walls featuring a substantial mahogany table encircled by plush leather chairs. "Master, we've got some news about what you've asked." Sakujiro handed over a paper containing the information Raymond had requested long ago. As Raymond perused the paper in his hand, his eyebrows lifted in response to what he discovered. Meanwhile, Sakujiro was pretty puzzled about why his master wanted info from such a small island. But he was used to his master's ways and didn't question it anymore. After a while, the subordinate responsible for dealing with the scout entered, presenting the information extracted from their captive. "Looks like we've got a challenging one here," Raymond muttered, sifting through the details in his hand. "Should we brace ourselves for a war?" Sakujiro spoke coldly, displaying a fearlessness toward the one responsible for the assassination of their representative in the city. However, the same couldn't be said for the subordinate who handed over the information. He visibly flinched at the mention of the word war. Luckily, Raymond shook his head, bringing a sense of relief to the subordinate. "We've got enough strength to take them on, but they're assassins. It'd be a hassle if we can't wipe them out all at once," he explained, evoking a serious expression from the middle-aged man who understood the frustration of dealing with assassins who vanish when cornered and strike only when it suits them. "They're like a stubborn nest of rats," Raymond continued, emphasizing the persistent nature of assassins. The subordinate gulped upon hearing Raymond likening the assassins to rats. He couldn't conceal the admiration in his eyes, thinking, the only person who could call them bunch rats is probably only our master in the whole continent. Raymond dropped the info on the table, shifting his focus to the needle they found in Albert's body, the murder weapon. "Well, I'll handle this myself. Lucky for us, I know where this little rat ran off to." His face cracked into a smirk, making everyone else in the room flinch. Sakujiro then nodded without saying anything. He understood it was time Raymond showed himself to the world since he had mastered his hatsu. The other guy looked surprised and asked, "How do you know where he went?" Raymond didn't say a word. Instead, he grabbed the paper the middle-aged man had just given him and tossed it over to the other guy. The subordinate effortlessly caught the paper, Unfolding it to read, the swamp master on Whale Island got nabbed by a kid. This only deepened the subordinate's confusion. Nevertheless, he shook his head, deciding it would be better if he didn't know anything. Meanwhile, Raymond's smirk remained as he quietly muttered, "Interesting. Looks like I've got a hunt ahead of me before heading to that place." Chapter 14, Chapter 12, Hunter Exam. As the date for the Hunter exam drew near, Raymond embarked on his private yacht, setting sail across the ocean towards Zaban City, the designated location for the exam. Typically, exam takers were required by the scouts to board a specific boat for preliminary screening. This additional step served as a personal examination, filtering out those deemed unworthy to proceed to the actual test. However, Raymond was exempt from this process, having already obtained the location of the exam through his extensive network of informants. After a long day's journey across the ocean, Raymond's yacht finally pulled into Dal Harbor, a bustling town serving as a hub for aspiring hunters heading to Zaban City for the exam. As Raymond disembarked from his luxurious vessel, he couldn't help but notice the curious stares directed his way. Clad in refined attire and exuding an aura of authority, he stood out amidst the crowd, prompting whispers and speculation about his identity. As he traversed the crowded dock, people instinctively made way for him. Many paid him little heed, dismissing him as a mere subordinate of some affluent individual. "Hey, big bro, why are you boarding a different ship than mine? You're here for the Hunter exam, too, right?" A child's voice cut through the ambient noise as Raymond moved through the crowd. A white-haired boy, no older than 12, approached, skateboard in hand. His curious gaze fixated on Raymond, sensing an air of seasoned strength about him. Observing the boy's innocent curiosity, Raymond arched an eyebrow with intrigue before speaking, "Well, I happen to have my own ship, so I don't need to travel on yours like everyone else." "Oh, I get it. So you're rich? Can you give me some money?" the child asked unabashedly, his innocence shining through his words. Raymond couldn't help but chuckle at the boy's straightforwardness, finding it endearing. The boy's subsequent frown only added to Raymond's amusement. Just then, a sleek limousine approached, gliding to a stop before them. With a smile, Raymond extended an offer to the boy, "How about I give you a ride to the exam location instead?" "Eh? Seriously?" The child's face lit up with excitement, his earlier frown replaced by pure joy. It was clear he was thrilled at the prospect of skipping the usual information-gathering process. Raymond chuckled softly at the boy's enthusiasm. He gestured towards the waiting limousine, and his men respectfully bowed their heads as Raymond led the way. The boy followed him into the vehicle without a second thought, seemingly unfazed by potential risks. Raymond couldn't help but shake his head in amusement, recognizing that Killua's confidence suggested he was fully prepared to handle any situation, whether it meant swiftly escaping or confronting potential threats. "I'm Killua. What about you, big bro?" As he settled into the seat beside Raymond, Killua introduced himself with an air of confidence. "I'm Raymond." "A pleasure to meet you, Killua," Raymond replied with a smile. The limousine began to move, gliding smoothly through the busy streets of Dal Harbor. Raymond glanced out the window, observing the bustling activity outside. "Hey, Killua, what's your reason for becoming a hunter?" Raymond inquired, curious about the child's motivations. Killua shrugged nonchalantly, "I've heard the exam is tough, so I want to test my skills. It shouldn't be too challenging for someone like you." Raymond raised an eyebrow. "Really? That's disappointing," Killua remarked. "And what about you, Raymond?" Raymond chuckled, considering his true intentions carefully. "I have someone I need to meet, just to make sure of something." "Hey? Is that it?" Killua asked, puzzled by Raymond's response. Raymond's main goal in joining the Hunter exam was to meet Isaac Netero, the respected chairman of the Hunter Association, in person without drawing any suspicion. Understanding the complexities of politics since they both were men with great force behind them, Raymond knew that directly asking for a meeting with Netero might put him at a disadvantage and risk his interests. So, he decided to take part in the Hunter exam to bump into Netero on the down low. This approach allowed him to encounter the seasoned veteran in a more laid-back setting, avoiding the complications that might arise from formal meetings arranged by his underlings within the Celestia Consortium. With a sharp eye for people, Raymond undertook this mission to gauge Netero's strength and determine whether he possessed enough strength to confront the formidable figurehead if necessary. Mindful of Netero's keen observation, Raymond meticulously planned his approach, understanding the importance of deciphering the old man's true intentions. As for the other stuff, it was just a bonus. Raymond chuckled, his tone lightening. Honestly, I also wanted to hunt down a little rat in the meantime. Unlike Netero, who was a seasoned pro, Raymond knew this little rat was no pushover. But he was pretty confident he could handle it. A little rat. Killua's expression briefly hardened, a hint of seriousness flickering across his face. As he continued conversing with Raymond, Killua gradually began to realize that the man before him was anything but ordinary. Despite Raymond's outward appearance of casual relaxation in the passenger seat, Killua couldn't shake the feeling that something was off as his pupils dilated in realization. I couldn't see an opening. Fuck, I was careless. This set off alarm bells for the young member of the Zaldik family, leaving him feeling increasingly uneasy. Despite his mind racing and inwardly cursing his silly mistake, Killua managed to maintain a calm exterior. Determined to stay composed, Killua took some deliberate steps. He made a conscious effort to calm his racing heart, not wanting to appear nervous and raise any red flags. Meanwhile, he checked out the car's details, just in case he needed an escape plan. But as time passed, his nerves started to get the best of him, and he felt himself teetering on the edge. Feeling his composure slip, Killua quickly pulled himself back into his usual laid-back mode, trying to act like everything was normal. He shifted in his seat slightly while they kept chatting on their way to Zaban City. However, Raymond couldn't help but notice Killua's subtle reaction as a faint smirk played on his lips. Quite the adorable young assassin, isn't he? Raymond silently remarked, amusement evident in his tone. The journey proved to be quite entertaining for Raymond, especially as they approached the bustling city on the horizon. Chapter 15, Chapter 13, Hidden Entrance. Navigating through the busy streets of the city, the car eventually halted in front of a modest ramen shop adjacent to a towering skyscraper bearing the insignia of Celestial Force. So, this is where the exam is taking place. Killua's youthful voice rang out, filled with wonder and anticipation as he stepped out of the vehicle. His eyes sparkled with excitement as he gazed up at the imposing structure before him. The realization dawned on Raymond as he stepped out of the car, his eyes scanning the area. Amidst the other buildings, the unassuming ramen shop stood out. No wonder acquiring the entire street was challenging. The Hunter Association has ties to this small shop, Raymond murmured, connecting the dots as he observed the surroundings. He pieced together the puzzle, understanding why purchasing the entire street had proven difficult. The association's influence quietly permeated the neighborhood. Celestial Force had grown into a powerful entity, with most decisions entrusted to Sekujiro, leaving Raymond to focus on pivotal choices that shaped the company's path. So, he totally overlooked such a report back then. I should have seen this coming, Raymond muttered under his breath. Feeling amused by the revelation, he continued toward the ramen shop. Raymond, why are we stopping here? Are you hungry? Killua's voice broke through Raymond's thoughts, his curiosity piqued by their unexpected destination. No, this building is mine. Pointing toward the towering building that Killua was assumed to be where the exam would take place, Raymond offered a small smile while shaking his head in response. He then pointed his hand at the small ramen shop as he continued, and the exam is being held right here, in this unassuming shop. Killua's eyes widened in surprise, not expecting the tall building to belong to Raymond. Really? However, the real shock came when he realized that the unassuming ramen shop was the venue for their hunter exam. Come in. Raymond simply shrugged, already striding toward the entrance. With a hesitant pause, Killua followed suit, curiosity mingling with anticipation as they entered the ramen shop. As they entered, the shop owner greeted them with a warm smile. Hello there, welcome to the sto. Welcome to my humble store, master. The shop owner's demeanor shifted abruptly upon seeing Raymond, his eyes widening in recognition. Hastily, he abandoned his post behind the counter to personally attend to Raymond. Killua observed, his surprise evident as he glanced back and forth between the shop owner and Raymond. Oh? Looks like we're on the same side, Raymond remarked, noting the shop owner's reaction. The shop owner, visibly nervous in Raymond's presence, nodded in confirmation. Got it, Raymond acknowledged, understanding why Sekujiro had directed them to the shop. He gestured towards Killua. Okay then, send him ahead and give me the report later. With a nod, the shop owner led Killua to a room that served as the entrance to the first round of the hunter exam. Oh, you have some business to take care of? That's a bummer. I was looking forward to sticking together, Killua grumbled childishly, his disappointment evident. Raymond chuckled at Killua's lies, noticing the relief in the kid's demeanor as they parted ways. "I'll catch up with you once I'm done here," he smirked at Killua. "Ah? Haha, yeah, that sounds great." Killua forced a laugh as he almost stood there, completely frozen by Raymond's remark. His awkwardness was palpable as he scratched his head. Internally, he cursed his own stupidity, feeling his cheeks flush with a mix of embarrassment and anger. Meanwhile, Raymond followed the shop owner to a different room, feeling thoroughly entertained by Killua's reaction. Seated in the room, Raymond accepted the report from the shop owner, its contents detailing the recent activities in your new city. It was precisely what Raymond had requested to stay informed, especially after the setback caused by Albert's sudden death, which had disrupted their plans for solidifying influence in the city. Celestia Consortium had been operating cautiously, avoiding any overt power struggles that could attract the attention of the Hunter Association. In a city teeming with mafia factions vying for control, Raymond understood the need to navigate carefully. Direct confrontation would only invite trouble, potentially escalating into a conflict with the Hunter Association. An outcome he sought to avoid at all costs. "They're keeping a close watch on us. Any misstep could be disastrous," Raymond murmured to himself, weighing the delicate balance of power in his mind. Though Raymond had strategically infiltrated the Hunter Association by embedding his men within its ranks to gain influence, he had exercised extreme caution to avoid drawing unwanted attention from the chairman, Isaac Netero. "I must meet him, no matter what." Raymond's resolve hardened as he contemplated his next move. He understood the importance of assessing Netero's character and the chairman's perception of him before devising any further plans. With a decisive nod, Raymond closed the report and tossed it into the small fire crackling in the room. The flickering flames illuminated his determined expression as he fell into a deep thought. As the door creaked open, the shop owner cautiously entered, bearing a freshly tailored vest designed to discreetly hold a knife and a vial of mysterious white powder. Raymond silently donned the vest, securing the knife snugly behind his back before slipping back into his blazer. "Is there something on your mind?" Raymond inquired, noticing the shop owner's perplexed expression. The shop owner hesitated, visibly trembling, before shaking his head. "Just ask away. It's not like it's top-secret information," Raymond reassured him with a wry smile. The shop owner hesitated, fidgeting nervously as he cast a wary glance at the concealed knife in Raymond's suit. Finally, gathering his courage, he voiced his question. "Master, why do you need a kitchen knife?" "Ah, that? Do you know why I'm taking the hunter exam?" Raymond chuckled softly, understanding the confusion behind the inquiry. The shop owner shook his head, his curiosity piqued. With a piercing gaze, Raymond explained, "I aspire to become a gourmet hunter." "Pardon?" The shop owner's eyes widened in surprise. Raymond chuckled at the shop owner's response, finding amusement in the exchange. Glancing at his watch, he realized it was time to depart. "I should get going, or I might miss the hunter exam," Raymond remarked. The shop owner nodded understandingly, with sweat rolling down his forehead. "Of course, allow me to guide you to the lift." "Thank you," Raymond replied. As they reached the room designated as the lift, the shop owner bowed respectfully, wishing Raymond luck. With a nod of acknowledgement, Raymond dismissed him and entered the lift alone, ready to embark on the next phase of his journey. Chapter 16, Chapter 14, The First Phase. As Raymond descended into the underground tunnel, the lift emitted a soft ding, signaling his arrival. Stepping out, Raymond was met with curious gazes from the other participants of the hunter exam. Clad in his sleek, luxurious suit, Raymond stood out amidst the crowd. His sophisticated attire hinted at a wealthy background, but it was his imposing aura that made others uneasy in his presence. Amidst the sea of participants, a short, green bean-shaped man caught Raymond's eye as he approached him. "Ah, just in time. You're the final participant for this year's exam. If you'd arrived a second later, you'd be in quite a bind," the bean-shaped man remarked with a small smile, handing Raymond a badge numbered 406. "Here's your badge. Keep it with you at all times, it helps us track your whereabouts in case of any emergencies." As the bean-like man finished speaking, a strange alarm blared, causing everyone to turn their heads in confusion. Their attention shifted to the newcomer, whose striking appearance immediately got their focus. With pale lavender locks framing his face and piercing blue eyes, the newcomer exuded an air of mystery. Despite his lack of a visible mouth, his intense gaze spoke volumes. Before anyone could inquire about the alarm, a powerful vibration shook the surroundings, startling everyone. The wall at the end of the tunnel began to ascend slowly, unveiling an expansive, seemingly endless passage beyond. Now, we've reached the end of the registration process. My name is Synopsis, and I'll be your guide for the 287th Hunter exam. Synopsis announced, his mustache bobbing up and down as he spoke, the sound of his voice echoing throughout the tunnel. Excitement buzzed through the air as the participants eagerly awaited further instructions. With that being said, let's officially begin the Hunter exam, Synopsis declared, prompting nods of agreement from the crowd. With a stern reminder of the exam's dangers, Synopsis instructed everyone to follow him. He turned on his heel and led the way into the tunnel, his confident stride signaling the start of their exam. As they moved forward into the tunnel, the participants exchanged glances before following behind Synopsis. Meanwhile, Raymond's attention fixated on a man adorned with needles sticking out from his face as a smirk slowly formed on his lips. "Found the rat," he muttered under his breath. A chubby man in his 30s who was clutching soft drinks in his hands immediately froze in his tracks as a chill ran down his spine at Raymond's intense stare. "Damn it!" he muttered to himself, realizing he couldn't execute his devious plan. That guy is also an unusual one. He was Tonpa the rookie crushed and was known for his dirty tactics. He always had the goal to trip up his fellow participants, going as far as to repeat his game by repeatedly joining the Hunter exam. Initially, he was about to try being sneaky with Raymond. But a sudden chill down his spine convinced him otherwise. As for the reason why he would do that? Simply because. Why not? Shifting his focus, Tonpa eyed a peculiar figure making odd sounds while tinkering with a laptop. With a smirk, he muttered to himself, "You're my first target, Nicholas." As the hours passed and the participants trailed behind Synopsis, confidence waned. His relentless pace wore them down, their energy draining with each step. After 2 grueling hours, they anticipated the end of the trial, only to find themselves still engulfed by the tunnel's darkness. Some faltered, succumbing to despair and dropping out of the race, while others persisted, their determination unwavering. Yet, their hopes shattered as they reached the 4-hour mark, only to encounter an endless flight of stairs looming ahead. Exhausted and disheartened, many collapsed, unable to summon the strength to continue. Raymond casually glanced at his watch, confirming that 4 relentless hours had elapsed. With a shake of his head at the defeated participants, he picked up his pace and surged ahead. "Raymond!" A child's voice reverberated through the tunnel, prompting Raymond to turn his head. There, approaching him, was Killua, accompanied by another kid. Killua was visibly relaxed. Though he was tense in front of Raymond before, it was mainly because there was little space to work with. Given the expansive nature of the tunnel, he was confident in his ability to handle any confrontation or evade it altogether. "Gone, this is the one I mentioned earlier," Killua said, directing his attention to the other kid as he introduced them both to each other. "He's Raymond. And Raymond, this is Gone. He's also 12, like me." Raymond couldn't suppress a chuckle at Killua's genuine enthusiasm upon encountering someone of his own age amid the Hunter exam. "Hey Raymond, I'm Gone. Pleasure to meet you." Gone extended a hand in greeting, and Raymond reciprocated with a nod and a warm smile. "Likewise, Gone. I'm Raymond." Their conversation flowed easily as they ascended, oblivious to the tall man with dark hair and a spiked crew cut trailing behind them. His annoyance was palpable as he struggled to keep pace. Leorio's expression soured further, prompting a chuckle from Kurapika, who effortlessly maintained his stride up the stairs. "Your frustration is showing again, Leorio." "Shut it, Kurapika." Leorio grumbled in response as Kurapika simply laughed, his movements remaining steady and effortless as they continued their ascent. As the light at the end of the tunnel's stairs became visible, a collective sigh of relief swept over the weary participants. Hope ignited in their eyes, signaling the near culmination of their demanding trek. Gone and Killua exchanged a playful glance, their laughter bubbling forth as they surged forward with renewed vigor. Raymond observed their antics with a fond shake of his head. He found himself admiring Gone's innocence, appreciating how effortlessly Gone let him into his world. It was as though there were no secrets between them, allowing Raymond to understand Gone's life with ease. Gone had a way of being completely open, sharing every detail of his life without reservation. From stories about his family to the happenings in his neighborhood, Gone held nothing back. "Such innocence," he muttered to himself, a nostalgic smile playing on his lips. It was a quality that attracted others to him, like magnets. Perhaps that's why he could influence people fairly easily, Raymond pondered, his eyes shimmering with newfound insight as he also reached the top of the stairs. Joining the others gathered there, Raymond observed Satos in silence, his gaze fixed on his watch as they awaited further instructions. Chapter 17, Chapter 15, Hisoka Maro. As Raymond stood in contemplative silence, his gaze drifted towards the Milsey Westlands, shrouded in a thick blanket of fog. Known as the Swindler's Forest, it was a dense expanse of trees that concealed countless secrets within its misty embrace. It must be somewhere in there, Raymond muttered, recalling the information he had gathered about a particular type of mushroom rumored to grow in the forest. He had stumbled upon it by chance, its flavor reminiscent of the shiitake mushrooms from his previous life but imbued with an unparalleled richness and nutritional value. Raymond had been discreetly procuring the mushrooms whenever he could and was planning to get some for the next exam phase. He planned to incorporate them into a dish featuring pork. Yet, at that moment, someone collided with Raymond's shoulder. The guy then tumbled to the ground with a groan as he spat, "Watch where you're going, you idiot." The guy was visibly irritated as he shot Raymond a venomous glare. But his bravado faltered as Raymond met their gaze with an icy stare, his demeanor chillingly composed. "Ha, I'll let it slide this time," the guy muttered, hastily picking themselves up. "Consider yourself lucky." Raymond remained unfazed, ignoring the simmering anger radiating from the other person. Noticing this made the guy feel completely embarrassed as his frustration slowly became evident as they struggled to maintain their composure. Just as tensions threatened to escalate, a sudden commotion erupted, drawing everyone's attention. As Raymond glanced over, he noticed a man suddenly emerged from the side boldly claiming to be the real examiner, hurling accusations at Satos, calling him to be a man-faced ape. Raymond's expression remained unimpressed as he noticed a clown-like figure was smirking and began to approach the scene. However, Raymond's brows furrowed when he caught the guy's gaze lingering on him. Suspicion pricked at Raymond's mind, though he brushed it off for the time being. Sure enough, Hisoka intervened without a word, flinging a deck of cards towards Satos and the self-proclaimed examiner. Raymond's frown deepened as he sensed something coming his way. "You might want to move aside." His tone was casual yet commanding when he turned to the man beside him. "Hey? What's your problem?" Before the man could finish his protest, Raymond shook his head dismissively and sidestepped. In the next moment, something flew through the air, striking the man squarely in the forehead. His protests were abruptly silenced as darkness closed in, consciousness slipping away. Looking at the man's forehead, Raymond noticed it wasn't a card like the clown's usual style. Instead, it was a coin lodged deep in his skin almost seamlessly. It was a discreet but effective method of incapacitation, leaving little evidence of the attacker's identity. "Hisoka Maro, hey!" Raymond shook his head, shooting an annoyed glance at Hisoka before ignoring the clown completely. To everyone else, the man struck by Hisoka's attack simply looked tired, his condition going unnoticed. Raymond decided to stay silent, knowing they needed to keep moving towards the venue for the second phase of the exam. Meanwhile, Hisoka raised an intrigued eyebrow at Raymond's reaction. He sensed it easily, "Hey!" he thought to himself, impressed by Raymond's perceptiveness. The attack Hisoka had launched was faster than his usual cards, infused with his nin for extra power and speed. Even experienced hunters would struggle to avoid such a sudden assault. Yet Raymond's calm response and disregard for Hisoka's actions surprised the clown, leaving him pondering about how strong Raymond actually was. Such presence, such demeanor, Hisoka muttered to himself, finding it hard to contain his excitement. "He's just like him." Hisoka's mouth twitched as he felt a surge of thrill. Raymond wasn't your average fighter. And Hisoka could sense that from the very start. From their first encounter, Hisoka recognized something familiar about Raymond, akin to the leader of a small group he had recently been playing around with. Raymond exuded a natural authority and charisma that commanded attention. It was this magnetic aura that intrigued Hisoka. He was eager to gauge Raymond's strength to see if he could provide the exhilarating challenge he so craved, which was why he used that chance. A sudden chill sent shivers down Raymond's spine, but he quickly shook it off as Satos announced the resumption of their marathon. Without complaint, the remaining participants followed after Satos. With just over 100 contenders left, those who persevered were clearly strong enough to endure a bit longer. As they approached the forest, Raymond decided to strike out on his own, venturing deeper into the woods. Encountering various challenges along the way, from aggressive animals to unfamiliar plants, Raymond remained undeterred, navigating through the obstacles with confidence. Eventually, he stumbled upon a strange tree emitting an eerie glow. Within its vicinity, a peculiar sphere of energy dispersed the fog, revealing the area around the tree. Raymond couldn't help but smile as he spotted a cluster of mushrooms resembling shiitake mushrooms, only larger in size, at the base of the tree. "There you are." With a satisfied nod, Raymond reached out to gather the mushrooms, pulling a small pouch from his vest. Carefully, he cut the mushrooms with his knife, taking only what he needed. As Raymond finished collecting the mushrooms, he sensed a presence behind him. Turning around, he was met with the sight of a tiger-like creature with a massive snake-like tail, growling angrily. It makes sense for something to be here after all," Raymond muttered to himself, eyeing the creature. He sheathed his knife and secured the pouch to his belt. Without hesitation, the creature lunged toward Raymond, claws extended and tail poised to strike. But before it could make contact, Raymond vanished from sight, leaving the creature bewildered. However, a sharp pain suddenly shot through its neck, causing its vision to fade to black. Raymond's voice reverberated in the darkness, "I won't hurt you since you're nearly extinct. But you'll have a hefty headache when you wake up." With a peaceful smile, Raymond moved on, leaving the creature behind. "I'm finished here. Time to head back." Glancing at his watch, Raymond turned and made his way back through the forest to rejoin the others. Chapter 18, Chapter 16, Fighting Hisoka. Meanwhile, Leorio and Kurapika found themselves facing their toughest challenge yet in the hunter exam, sweat trickling down their backs. The tension was palpable as they were standing before Hisoka, who had just dispatched a group of participants. Kurapika glanced around cautiously, whispering to Leorio, "Leorio, I'll signal when it's time. Make sure you go in a different direction." Leorio gritted his teeth, his silence conveying his agreement. Though it stung his pride to back down from a fight, he knew it was their best chance at survival. Hisoka's eyes glinted with interest as he approached Kurapika and Leorio, a smirk playing on his lips. "How about we have a little fun together?" Kurapika and Leorio remained silent, but their muscles tensed in anticipation. They exchanged a brief glance before Kurapika locked eyes with Hisoka and yelled, "Now!" Without hesitation, they bolted in opposite directions, leaving Hisoka to raise an intrigued eyebrow. He could potentially catch one of them, but it would be a challenge. Their quick thinking and teamwork impressed him, enough to pass his little test. Very clever. With a chuckle, Hisoka turned on his heel, ready to continue on his way. Oh! However, Hisoka abruptly stopped in his tracks, his gaze locking onto Leorio who had just emerged from the fog as the latter slowly retraced his steps. Leorio muttered to himself, "I can't just give up like this." Leorio knew that if he gave in to running away, it would become a habit whenever things got tough. That wasn't something he was willing to accept, even if his life was on the line. He couldn't let his pride be compromised. Hisoka's smirk widened as Leorio suddenly charged toward him, brandishing a long stick of wood. Leorio swung the stick at Hisoka's face, catching him off guard with the solid blow. But Hisoka's figure dispersed like mist, reappearing beside Leorio in an instant, causing him to stumble to his knees with a curse. "Damn it!" Hisoka's smile remained as he poised to strike Leorio from behind. However, before he could act, something collided with his face, momentarily throwing him off balance. Turning to his assailant, Hisoka's grin widened as he saw the kid he had noticed earlier. "A fishing rod, huh? Interesting choice of weapon, kid." "Gon." Leorio's surprised voice echoed through the forest as Gon stood a few paces away, clutching his fly line tightly, ready to use his fishing rod as a weapon once again. Tension crackled in the air as Leorio prepared to attack, and Gon braced himself for Hisoka's approach. But their focus was suddenly shattered as all three of them turned their heads at the sound of someone running through the forest. A figure darted past them, sending a surge of excitement through Hisoka's veins, his face contorting with anticipation. Raymond emerged from the foliage, his eyes widening in surprise at the unexpected gathering. Sensing the tension in the air, he cast a wary glance at Hisoka. Shaking his head, Raymond spoke casually, "Don't mind me, just carry on with what you were doing." Leorio was rendered speechless by Raymond's casual tone while Gon blinked in surprise at the sight of him. "Wasn't he ahead of us?" Gon couldn't help but wonder, recalling Raymond's position from earlier. His mind raced with questions, trying to understand how Raymond could have ended up here when he had been ahead of them. Still frowning, Raymond watched with his mouth twitching as Hisoka's expression turned bizarre, a strange sense of excitement gleaming in his eyes. Hisoka dashed toward Raymond. Leorio and Gon stood in shock as Hisoka's figure blurred across the ground, moving with such speed that they struggled to keep up with his movements. Is he really here to test us? Leorio muttered, his fists clenched in frustration. It was clear from Hisoka's display that he had been holding back a lot. Meanwhile, Raymond frowned as he watched Hisoka approach. Oh, for God's sake! If it were Netero, Raymond would have welcomed the challenge. Netero was known for his formidable martial arts skills and dedication to perfecting his techniques. But Hisoka? While undoubtedly strong, Raymond knew that Hisoka was unpredictable and a bit unstable. He preferred not to get involved with someone like him. Raymond sighed as he swiftly halted his step, narrowly avoiding a blow aimed at his head. He leaped backward as Hisoka hurled a card that was coated with Nen aimed at him. With ease, Raymond swatted it away. I didn't realize there was a circus in the forest. Raymond remarked dryly. Hisoka chuckled lightly in response, neither did I, but I thought the forest could use a bit more laughter. You must be the funniest person in the hunter exam right now, Raymond jabbed back, prompting Hisoka to burst into laughter unexpectedly. Raymond shook his head, glancing at his watch. Time was running out, and he knew they didn't have much left. With a swift movement, his figure vanished from sight, causing Hisoka's eyes to widen in shock. Before Hisoka could react, Raymond reappeared, delivering a powerful kick to his chest. Your reflexes are impressive, but... Raymond's voice trailed off. Suddenly, Raymond disappeared again, and Hisoka grimaced in pain as he felt a sharp jab to his side which made him realize the first kick was just a distraction, followed by an uppercut that sent him hurtling through the air. Despite the agony, Hisoka's body trembled with excitement. But it wasn't over yet. As Raymond's figure soared through the air, he unleashed a powerful kick aimed at Hisoka, who swiftly raised his hand in defense. Despite Hisoka's attempt to block, he felt a sharp crack in his bones as Raymond's kick connected, sending him hurtling even deeper into the forest. It was clear that Raymond had intended to send him flying all along. However, Hisoka smirked as he prepared to activate his bungee gum, the versatile substance he had attached to Raymond during their earlier exchange. With a flick of his wrist, he planned to use it to pull Raymond along for the ride as he soared freely through the forest so they could continue their fight. Oh, this? You think I wouldn't notice? Raymond's casual voice echoed through the forest, causing Hisoka's smile to vanish in an instant. He felt his Nen being consumed by Raymond's, a sensation that sent shivers down his spine, which made Hisoka hastily let go of his Nen. Raymond possessed unique Nen property that was able to consume and neutralize the Nen of his opponents upon contact, which he called Aura Annihilator. Although Hisoka's plan had failed and Raymond had thoroughly defeated him, the experience only served to invigorate him. What a fascinating character, such strength and wits, Hisoka muttered to himself, disappearing into the depths of the forest. Chapter 19, Chapter 17, The Second Phase. Kurapika noticed Leorio's sudden return to Hisoka's location and frowned, rushing back to support his friend. Who are these people? However, what he witnessed upon his arrival left him stunned. The battle between Hisoka and Raymond unfolded before him, displaying a level of skill and power that was clearly beyond their league. Kurapika clenched his fists, realizing that his own strength was nowhere near enough to match these two, especially considering his goal of avenging his clan. He knew that Phantom Troop should be strong and definitely would be quite on the same level as these two in front of him. I need to become stronger, he muttered, watching Hisoka disappear into the forest's depths. Meanwhile, Leorio's jaw dropped in astonishment at the sight of the intense confrontation. He looked at Raymond with disbelief. Wow, Raymond, you're incredible. I didn't know you were so strong. Gon was enthusiastic as he approached Raymond with excitement, giggling cheerfully as he recounted how he struggled to keep up with the intensity of the fight. Let's keep moving. Time's running out for the second phase. Raymond shook his head, addressing Leorio and Kurapika. Not much time left. Kurapika blinked in surprise, turning to Raymond for an explanation. Raymond smiled slightly as he began to jog in the direction they needed to go. Just a gut feeling, he said. Let's go. The others followed suit, trusting Raymond's intuition as they continued on their way to the venue for the second phase. Gon looked at Raymond with admiration sparkling in his eyes, clearly impressed by his strength. Raymond, what kind of hunter do you want to be? You're so strong. You should be able to explore the whole world without any worries. Gon asked, his eyes shining with excitement. Raymond pondered for a moment before responding, I do want to explore the world as well. Really? I'm the same. I want to travel all over the world and maybe even find my father, Gon shared enthusiastically, nodding along with his own aspirations. So, you want to be a ruins hunter? Kurapika interjected, drawing Gon's attention. Gon looked puzzled as Kurapika explained the different types of hunters, but the plethora of options overwhelmed him. He struggled to absorb everything at once. However, to everyone's surprise, Raymond shook his head. Not really. Hey? Why? You said you want to explore the world just like I do. Gon's confusion was evident as he slowed his pace momentarily before resuming alongside Raymond. Leorio also became intrigued, his curiosity piqued as Raymond's smile vanished, replaced by a serious expression. I want to be a gourmet hunter. Kurapika and Gon stopped in their tracks, their expressions filled with disbelief. Leorio stumbled on his feet, his mouth twitching as he recalled the intense battle he had witnessed earlier. Who would believe you after what you've shown us? He shook his head, carefully regaining his composure. Raymond shook his head at their incredulous response, his gaze drifting to the mushroom he had collected from the forest earlier. But I'm not joking though, he muttered to himself quietly. They continued their journey through the forest, making good progress as they traversed the dense foliage. After a few hours of running, they spotted the rest of the group ahead. Hey, Gon! Over here! Killua waved enthusiastically as he spotted them approaching. Killua! Gon's excitement was palpable as he quickened his pace, eager to share the recent events with his friend. The others smiled at Gon's enthusiasm as Raymond bid them farewell, finding a comfortable spot beneath a tree to wait for the start of the second phase. Almost time. He mused, glancing over at the guy with needles and letting out a small chuckle. As the minutes passed, Raymond spotted Hisoka emerging from the forest. His tattered appearance caught Raymond's attention as his locked his gaze on Raymond, prompting a resigned sigh from him. Got a damn clown on my tail, he muttered under his breath. Surprisingly, Hisoka didn't make any hostile moves. Instead, he simply strolled over to a different tree across from Raymond's and settled down, appearing to relax while he waited. However, Sato's immediately grabbed everyone's attention with his announcement, congratulating them for reaching the venue of the second phase, Visca Forest Preserve. He wished them luck and gestured towards the open doors of a castle. Silence fell as everyone's eyes turned towards two figures standing in front of the mansion. Welcome to the second phase of the hunter exam. Please, come inside, the woman spoke with casual confidence, introducing herself as Menchi. Beside her, a big, jovial man beamed at the participants. I'm also an examiner for this phase. Boera. A pleasure to meet you all. Menchi couldn't help but chuckle as she noticed Boera's stomach growling loudly, signaling his hunger. Well, I'm sure you're all hungry too. So, for the second phase, the test will be cooking. She announced eagerly, rising to her feet. Confusion swept through the group as they struggled to make sense of this unexpected turn of events. Cooking? What did that have to do with becoming a hunter? Why cooking? We're here to become hunters, not chefs. Complained Toto, a large wrestler with a rounded face, slicked back hair ending in a ponytail, and shaved sides. Menchi reclined, closing her eyes with an air of nonchalance as she explained, that's right. Just whip up something that can please our palates. Why? Because we're both gourmet hunters. Hey! Toto burst into laughter, joined by the others in the room. Meanwhile, Gon and his companions exchanged skeptical glances, their eyes eventually settling on Raymond. They seemed to be silently challenging him to prove his determination to become a gourmet hunter. Raymond couldn't help but chuckle at their expressions, finding their skepticism quite amusing. Boera paid no attention to their laughter, explaining that the main ingredient for the challenge would be pork, which they were tasked with hunting around the castle grounds. He mentioned that the area was home to the Great Stamp, the world's most ferocious pig. Despite their complaints, the participants reluctantly accepted the challenge, grumbling as they headed out to gather their ingredients. However, Menchi shook her head, voicing her doubts. You think it would be easy, hey? The Great Stamp is not something you can easily catch. Chapter 20, Chapter 18, Culinary Master. As everyone spread out to search for pigs, Raymond followed their trail, keeping an eye out for any signs of the Great Stamp's presence. He moved through the forest casually like he owned the place. Meanwhile, Gon and his friends stumbled upon a group of the Great Stamp. They were taken aback to discover that these pigs were carnivorous, and they found themselves under attack as the beasts charged at them with ferocity. The commotion attracted the attention of the other participants, who saw it as an opportunity to gather the necessary ingredients for the cooking challenge. However, they soon realized the challenge was tougher than expected. The great stamp's powerful snouts proved to be resistant to their attempts to subdue them. Even when Toto tried to hurl large stones at the pigs, his efforts were in vain as the stones were effortlessly crushed under the force of the pigs' snouts. However, Gon remained undeterred. Despite being knocked over by the pig's strength, he quickly observed a potential weakness. When the pigs collided with trees, the impact caused fruits to fall from the branches, causing the pigs to recoil in pain. Recognizing this vulnerability, Gon leaped over one of the pigs and struck it from above, targeting the vulnerable spot just behind its snouts. With a well-timed blow, he managed to knock the pig off balance. Inspired by what Gon had done, the others followed suit, eventually overcoming the great stamp and securing their own pigs for the cooking challenge. Raymond observed the great stamps carefully, opting for a smaller one that was guaranteed to be tender. As he approached his chosen pig, he noticed the others had already gotten one for themselves. Deciding to follow suit, Raymond swiftly subdued the smaller great stamp that charged at him, knocking it out with a casual slap to the head after stopping its attack with ease. With his prey secured, Raymond joined the others in preparing his pig for cooking. As Menchi watched the participants cook their catches without any preparation, her irritation grew. "These guys are clueless," she grumbled, shaking her head in frustration. Being a foodie and a gourmet herself, Menchi couldn't help but feel annoyed at the sight of people wasting good ingredients due to their ignorance. "If I wasn't an examiner, I'd smack some sense into their heads," she muttered, her frustration evident. But as an examiner, there was nothing she could do but watch and hope they learned from their mistakes. However, her eyes flashed in surprise as her attention turned toward Raymond. "Oh? Seems like this handsome guy knows what he's doing." Raymond carefully positioned the pig on the table, placing his pouch beside it and retrieving the mushroom he had collected earlier. To the surprise of everyone around, Raymond then wore an apron, a curious sight that earned him puzzled looks from his fellow participants. Leorio couldn't help but mumbled, "No way, is he truly an actual cook?" Ignoring the stares, Raymond focused on his task. With practiced hands, he wielded his knife expertly, swiftly skinning the pig with precision. The onlookers watched in awe as Raymond skillfully handled the task, his movements fluid and efficient. With the pork sizzling in the skillet, Raymond wasted no time. He sliced the mushrooms with precision, the knife gliding effortlessly through the tender caps. Next, he turned his attention to the garlic, mincing it finely until it released its pungent aroma, filling the area with its distinctive scent. As the oil in the skillet heated up, Raymond carefully added the sliced pork, the meat immediately sizzling as it hit the hot surface. The scent of Raymond's cooking filled the air, drawing the attention of everyone around. Despite their own attempts at cooking, the other participants couldn't help but be impressed by Raymond's skill. As they watched him work, the others felt a pang of inadequacy compared to Raymond's culinary prowess. "How dare you call these garbages a fucking dish?" Their own dishes, lacking in flavor and presentation, had been rejected by Menchi and Boera. Meanwhile, Boera, having eaten too much of the lackluster food, found himself craving for more as he smelled the aroma of Raymond's cooking. Despite feeling uncomfortably full, he couldn't resist the temptation as he drooled. "Menchi, I think that handsome guy would bring something awesome to us. Just the smell alone already guaranteed that." Menchi nodded in response. The enticing aroma of the cooking meat filled the air, mingling with the earthy scent of the mushrooms and the sharp tang of the garlic. He then sprinkled the miraculous white powder he had prepared beforehand. With practiced skill, Raymond tossed the mushrooms and garlic into the skillet, the ingredients dancing together in a delicious symphony of flavors. With a final stir, Raymond ensured that every piece of meat and vegetable was coated in the savory sauce, the aroma intensifying with each passing moment. As the scent filled the kitchen, it acted like a magnet, drawing everyone closer to the source of the delicious smell. "Perfect." With a satisfied smile, Raymond declared his dish ready, the anticipation evident in the eager expressions of those around him. The participants had unconsciously gathered around the table as they couldn't help but be drawn to the smell. Raymond's dish arrived at the judges' table, drawing the attention of Menchi and Boera. Their eyes lit up with anticipation as they beheld the masterpiece before them. "Stir-fried pork with mushroom and garlic sauce," Raymond announced with a smile, presenting his creation with pride. The dish looked absolutely delectable, the pork perfectly cooked to a golden brown hue, the mushrooms sliced thinly and arranged artfully around the plate. The sauce shimmered invitingly, its aroma filling the room with promises of flavor and satisfaction. Menchi and Boera exchanged impressed glances before eagerly picking up their utensils to sample the dish. So tender. It melted right into my mouth like a cotton candy. As they took their first bites, their expressions softened into looks of pure delight, confirming Raymond's culinary prowess. With eager anticipation, Menchi and Boera each took a bite of the dish, their taste buds immediately tingling with delight. It was as if they had been transported to culinary paradise, their senses overwhelmed by the explosion of flavors dancing on their tongues. The tender pork, earthy mushrooms, and fragrant garlic combined harmoniously, sending them into a state of pure bliss. "This is too good!" Menchi exclaimed with pure ecstasy. Her eyes lit up with sheer joy as both continued to indulge in the dish, unable to resist its irresistible allure. Before they knew it, they had devoured every last morsel, their plates empty save for the lingering traces of the delectable sauce. Turning to Raymond with wide-eyed amazement, Menchi and Boera could hardly contain their astonishment. Their mouths agape in disbelief, they stared at him in awe, their admiration for his culinary prowess shining brightly in their eyes. As they relished the delicious flavors, Menchi couldn't help but admire Raymond's skill. "This handsome guy is a culinary master!" she exclaimed, her eyes shining with admiration. Boera nodded in agreement with a satisfied expression. They exclaimed eagerly, their voices filled with reverence as they begged for another serving of Raymond's extraordinary creation. Chapter 21, Chapter 19, Isaac Netero. "Raymond, can we have some too?" Gon piped up with his usual enthusiasm. Killua was practically drooling, and even Kurapika and Leorio were eyeing the food hungrily, though they tried to play it cool. Raymond chuckled at their eager faces, pleased to share his culinary creations with these kids. "Of course, help yourselves," he replied with a smile. As Raymond began serving the dish to Gon, Killua, and the others, their eyes lit up with excitement. Each bite filled them with delight, their taste buds tingling with the delicious flavors. However, as the dish began to dwindle, some of the participants realized there wouldn't be enough for everyone. Disappointed sighs filled the air as they watched others enjoy the delectable meal. Meanwhile, Satos frowned as he realized only Raymond had passed the exam. "The chairman needs to know about this," he muttered to himself, retrieving a communication device from his pocket to report the news. "Well, I guess there is only one of you who passed." Menchi's relaxed tone reverberated through the venue, causing frustration to simmer among the gathered candidates. "Well, I suppose it's the end of the exam." Unfazed, Menchi simply patted her stomach with a satisfied grin, her tone carrying a hint of amusement. Despite the recognition of Raymond's cooking, discontentment grew among those present. "I refuse to accept this." Todo's voice rang out with indignation, directed at both Boera and Menchi. After all, they had set out to become hunters, not chefs. "How dare you? A mere gourmet hunter, to judge us like this?" Menchi remained unfazed by the outburst as she responded with a casual yawn that only served to fuel Todo's anger further. Attempting to rein in his rising temper, Todo fought the urge to act impulsively, but Menchi's dismissive words proved to be the final straw. "Whatever, do your best in next year." Menchi's indifferent tone was like a match to a powder keg, igniting Todo's fury. "You motherfucker!" Todo's enraged cry pierced the air as he lunged toward Menchi, his intent clear. But before the situation could escalate further, Boera intervened with a heavy sigh. Moving swiftly, he delivered a resounding slap to Todo's cheek, the force of which sent him hurtling toward the gate. Todo collided with the barrier with a resounding crash before crumpling to the ground in pain, his outburst quelled by the unexpected intervention. "Wah!" The surprising show of strength from the gourmet hunter elicited wide-eyed astonishment from the gathered crowd, their collective disbelief palpable as whispers spread throughout the room. Gon and his companions, having witnessed Raymond's capabilities previously, were less taken aback by the display. "Should I just try to become a gourmet hunter as well?" "Please don't. You might end up harming innocent people." Leorio's words prompted a sharp retort from Kurapika. His words struck a nerve with Leorio. "Hey? What are you saying?" Leorio's temper flared at Kurapika's remark. Gon and Killua exchanged amused glances as they giggled before turning their attention to the escalating tension between their friends, silently anticipating an exciting fight. Raymond just amusedly looked at the scene before his expression hardened as he turned to look at a giant aircraft looming slowly up in the air. "Oh ho ho, it seems like there's a problem." A thunderous voice reverberated through the air, capturing the attention of everyone present. All eyes turned upward to behold the figure descending from the sky, an elderly man with a distinctive appearance, sporting a ponytail, a thick beard, and adorned earlobes. Draped in a loose white kimono, his descent created a sizable impact crater upon landing. Menchie's surprise was palpable as she identified the newcomer, Chairman Netero. "He's just as formidable as the rumors suggest," Raymond whispered to himself, a rush of adrenaline igniting his senses. It had been ages since Raymond had felt such excitement at the prospect of encountering another martial artist. As he observed Netero in silence, he couldn't shake the feeling of anticipation coursing through him. Meanwhile, Netero's gaze pierced through the crowd, his words directed at Menchie for letting her anger cloud her judgment. Yet, amidst the tension, his attention was drawn to a figure whose aura resonated with a rare purity of martial spirit. "Oh? He is." Netero silently thought as he observed Raymond. Raymond felt a strange energy crackling in the air as their eyes met, a silent understanding passing between them. In that charged moment, both men harbored the same unspoken declaration in their minds. "I can defeat him." Noticing each other's thoughts, both of them curled up their lips in amusement. While most onlookers remained oblivious to the subtle exchange between Raymond and Netero, Hisoka and Illumi were not among them. Their keen senses allowed them to discern the shift in the atmosphere. Illumi regarded Raymond with a newfound sense of wariness, recognizing the latent threat he posed. However, Hisoka reacted with intense fervor. A surge of adrenaline coursed through his veins, tightening every muscle in his body. He held little interest in Netero since he was an aging figure. However, unlike Netero, Raymond sparked something primal within Hisoka. "So, considering the circumstances, it seems only fair to consult the sole participant who passed the exam." Netero's voice carried across the venue, drawing the attention of all present. Eyes turned toward Raymond, reflecting a mix of pleading, wariness, and hostility. Raymond responded with a light chuckle, "Well, what can I say? I'm just another participant. The association will have to make the call." "How magnanimous of you!" Netero's laughter filled the air, though his gaze remained sharp. Raymond's words, subtly implying authority over the association, did not go unnoticed. Netero approached Raymond with deliberate steps, the crowd instinctively parting to make way for him. Extending his hand in gratitude, he addressed Raymond with a kind smile. "Thank you for your understanding, participant number 406. Raymond reciprocated with a warm smile, meeting Netero's handshake firmly. "It's no trouble, Chairman," Raymond replied calmly, though he felt the force behind Netero's grip as both of them channeled Nen in the handshake. Raymond understood the unspoken challenge implicit in the exchange. "Haha, then, would you like to observe the exam or take a rest in our aircraft?" Netero's laughter rang out, offering Raymond a choice. "I could use some rest," Raymond admitted with a nod. "Very well, please." Netero gestured towards the waiting aircraft, signaling Raymond to enter. With a nod of acknowledgement, Raymond made his way toward the aircraft. "His Nen is indisputably formidable, indeed," Raymond murmured to himself as he inspected his hand, which bore the marks of Netero's overpowering aura. "Seems like I need to hasten the plan a little bit," he concluded silently, a determined glint in his eye. Meanwhile, Netero observed his own Nen, sensing a subtle shift in its dynamics after the encounter with Raymond. Despite his years of experience, he couldn't help but marvel at the potency of Raymond's aura. "What a dangerous young man!" Netero chuckled to himself, a mixture of admiration and wariness coloring his thoughts as he pondered the implications of their brief exchange. Chapter 22, Chapter 20, A Sly Fox. Amidst the busy preparations, participants boarded the aircraft, getting ready for the substitution exam as they arrived at Split Mountain. Raymond glanced out the window, lost in thought, as he absent-mindedly traced his finger along the sofa's armrest. "Raymond." Raymond turned at the sound of his name, finding Sato's standing nearby with a sharp gaze fixed on him. "Celestia." Raymond's eyebrows raised in surprise since he hadn't expected Sato's to know his identity. "Oh? You know me? Well, most higher UPS and some of us are aware of your identity." A green bean-like man entered the room, his demeanor much more serious than before. Taking a seat opposite Raymond, he regarded him with a solemn expression. "I suppose I should introduce myself. My name is Beans. It's a pleasure to meet you, Raymond Celestia." However, his serious expression didn't really impress Raymond since Beans looked adorable instead. "Say, what's your goal in participating in the Hunter exam?" Beans asked his question with a serious demeanor, and Sato's turned sharply to Raymond, awaiting his response. They were well aware of Raymond's considerable influence and questionable actions in recent years. Given his track record, their skepticism was warranted. Although they were eager to intervene, the Hunter Association had never caught Raymond engaging in illegal activities, much to their frustration. Nevertheless, they remained vigilant, determined to prevent Raymond from expanding his influence through the association. They understood that allowing him to do so could make him unstoppable. Despite the tense atmosphere, Raymond responded with hearty laughter, catching Beans off guard. The surprise on Beans' face was evident as he blinked in astonishment. Satos just stood in silence with a frown. "Ah, my apologies." Raymond attempted to suppress his laughter before addressing them. "Someone took out one of my men, so I'm here to track them down." "And you expect us to believe that?" Satos interjected after a moment of silence, skepticism evident in his tone. "Why wouldn't you? There's no benefit in lying to you." Raymond merely shrugged in response, offering a nonchalant retort. Of course, there was. That's why Raymond had kept his true intentions of meeting with Netero to himself. Subordinates often complicate matters, after all. "I see. Just finish your business quickly and leave us alone." Bean let out a heavy sigh in response, feeling the tension ease from his shoulders as he wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead. "By the way, if I pass the hunter exam, will I still receive a hunter license?" "Yes." "Good to know. Anyway, could I trouble you for a cup of coffee?" Bean sighed again, seemingly accustomed to Raymond's evasive manner of speaking, which was similar to their chairman. Standing up, Beans responded, "Of course. Please wait a moment." "I'll take care of it," Satos chimed in. His expression was visibly dissatisfied with how Raymond treated them, as if they were his subordinates. Despite his discomfort, he remained silent. Still, as Bean's subordinate, it was only natural for Satos to fulfill the request. As they both made their way out of the room, Raymond couldn't help but chuckle softly. "I prefer my coffee without sugar. And if you don't mind, please bring me a chessboard." "I'll see what I can do," Satos replied, briefly pausing in his stride before continuing on his way. After savoring the coffee Satos had prepared, Raymond found himself among the 43 remaining candidates as they moved on to the venue for the third exam. Being the only participant with a private room, Raymond received an unexpected visitor. An old man cheerfully greeted, "Hello there." "Oh, Chairman Netero. I wasn't expecting you," Raymond greeted with a smile. "Oh ho ho ho, just thought I'd surprise you, young man," Netero chuckled, attempting to leverage his elder status. Raymond's smile remained unwavering, unperturbed by Netero's attempt at amiability. "I see. Would you like to come in?" "Sure thing." Netero came in and looked around like a curious old man as Raymond sat down before gesturing him to sit. "Oh, Chairman, please take a seat." "Of course." "Oh ho ho ho." Netero smiled as he sat down after Raymond. "So, what brings you to my humble abode, Chairman?" Raymond inquired, a warm smile gracing his features. "Ah, I simply wanted to meet the only participant to pass Menchie's initial test. I've heard you're quite the talented cook." "Oh, please. I'm just a home cook at best." Their exchange was cordial, the atmosphere brimming with warmth as if it were a conversation between a grandfather and his grandson. "Oh ho ho ho, you're as humble as ever. And now that I think about it, it's no surprise your new venture is thriving." "Oh? Have you tried our product?" Raymond asked, maintaining his smile despite Netero's subtle implication that he was keeping an eye on him. "Yes, the Kintika fried chicken, isn't it? It's absolutely delicious. The fact that it's ready in minutes is truly impressive. How did you come up with such an idea?" Netero inquired, a smile playing on his lips. Raymond explained how he had met a chef from Japan who had an unusual obsession with fried chicken, inspiring the concept of Kintika fried chicken. The name Kintika meant gold in Japan, signifying the golden perfection of their fried chicken. "Enough about that," Raymond said, changing the subject. "We still have some time. Would you care to play a game of chess with me?" Raymond took out a chessboard he had requested from Satos, prompting Netero to raise an eyebrow. "You brought a chessboard with you?" "Not really. I asked one of the examiners for it a while ago since I was feeling bored," Raymond replied, smiling with his eyes closed. Netero's smile widened even further as he chuckled, "Oh ho ho ho." Realizing that Raymond had planned his visit, Netero couldn't help but feel thoroughly impressed as his gaze visibly sharpened. "Well, I may be an old bone at this point, but I'm always up for a game." "Awesome." And so, they engaged in several games of chess. Eventually, Netero bid his farewell, explaining that he needed to get some rest as he couldn't stay up too late due to his age. Raymond knew it was nonsense, but he didn't call him out for that. As Netero exited the room, Raymond's cheerful expression faded, replaced by a sense of nonchalance. He rhythmically tapped the sofa's shoulder, contemplating the chess game they had just played. He couldn't help but notice that Netero had intentionally made some clumsy mistakes throughout the game, prompting Raymond to respond with clever moves. Reflecting on their games, Raymond realized there was more to Netero than met the eye. That old man is a sly fox, Raymond muttered to himself. Furrowing his eyebrows, Raymond concluded that he needed to adjust his plans regarding the Hunter Association accordingly. Chapter 23, Important Notes. Hey, guys! A reader brought up the issue of the name of the title, of the book, being too common, which I agree with. Point 1. Anyway, I have some in mind, but I will let you guys decide this time since I think all three of them are good. I can't post a poll here, which is unfortunate, so I used what I have at the moment and posted a poll in my Patreon. I pinned the post, and it was available to everyone. Point 1. So, any of you with an account should be able to give your vote. I prefer the Throne of Shadows, but let me know what you guys think. Comment. For comment. Vote. Chapter 24, Chapter 21, the third phase. As Netero made his way through the corridor, his jovial demeanor faded, replaced by a furrowed brow as he mulled over his encounter with Raymond. He's far too cunning for someone his age, he muttered, shaking his head in disbelief. With a heavy sigh, Netero pondered the situation. Many individuals within the Hunter Association had been closely monitoring Raymond and his activities. Their persistent surveillance had led them to him, seeking resolution and even requesting his personal intervention. However, Netero found himself in a difficult position. While the activities of the Celestia Consortium may have caused inconvenience to some, they hadn't crossed any lines that warranted direct action from him. In fact, their presence had brought prosperity to many. It was simply a matter of conflicting interests, something Netero himself wasn't overly concerned about, given his preoccupation. Yet, despite the societal benefits, Netero couldn't shake the unease of one individual holding such immense power, particularly someone of Raymond's caliber. He's a terrifying young man, he muttered. With a solemn resolve, Netero made a decision. He would closely watch Raymond, ensuring that his actions didn't tip the delicate balance of power. Continuing down the corridor, Netero's interest was piqued as he encountered two youngsters seemingly bonding. Oh? Jing's kid and Zeno's grandkid, hey? Netero remarked, raising his eyebrows in curiosity. What a scary duo, he chuckled to himself. Perhaps I should have a bit of fun with them. His expression returned to its usual joyous demeanor as he considered the idea. While everyone else took the opportunity to rest and prepare for the next stage, the aircraft cruised through the skies toward their destination. The Trick Tower. After spending the night on board, they all caught sight of a towering cylindrical structure ahead as they landed atop it. Raymond joined the others as they disembarked, and Bean stepped forward to explain the third phase of the Hunter exam. In essence, the objective of this phase was simple. Reach the ground level of the tower. After Beans had briefed the participants, he and the other Hunter Association members left them to tackle the third phase on their own. Raymond ventured forth alone, navigating the structure in search of the trapdoor entrance. Most other participants had already caught on to the method of entry. This one should still be open, right? Approaching a trapdoor cautiously, Raymond tested it with a tap of his foot. To his surprise, it swung open beneath him, causing him to plummet into the building below. Oh! Upon landing, Raymond found himself in a room below the trapdoor. He raised his eyebrows as he discovered several familiar faces awaiting him, the last member of their group to begin the exam. Raymond's gaze fell upon a green-haired girl wearing a large hat, who glanced at him briefly before turning away. Number 246, Ponzu. Raymond murmured, recognizing her. Next, he spotted Botero, who nodded at him in acknowledgement. Number 191, Botero. Raymond returned the gesture with a nod of his own. Then there was number 103, Bourbon, a bulky man with a prominent nose. He wore a light blue and purple robe paired with a tan turban. And the final member, number 362, Ken Mai, Raymond noted, observing a young man with a shaven head, protruding ears, and narrow eyes. Ken Mai bowed slightly in Raymond's direction, placing his hand over his chest. A respectful young man, indeed, he silently thought. Raymond chuckled as he addressed the group, looks like I've kept you all waiting. Don't sweat it. We weren't waiting long anyway, Botaro replied with a laugh. Ponzu and Kenmai nodded in agreement while Bourbon remained silent. Botaro motioned for Raymond to set the timer on his wrist, which Raymond promptly did. As the wall slid upward, revealing a question about whether to open the door, they all decided without hesitation, pressing the button on their wrist. In response, the door on the opposite side slid open. As they entered the room, they encountered another decision to choose which direction to take. After a brief exchange of nods, most of them opted to go left, and the bars to the left slowly slid up, allowing them to proceed. Before long, they found themselves in a large room with a small stone platform at its center. Botaro and the others sensed a presence on the opposite side of the room. They observed a group of individuals wearing robes, their hands locked together. Who are they? Everyone looked puzzled. Suddenly, a booming voice echoed through the room via a speaker. The examiner began to explain what they needed to do next. I suppose it's time to decide who goes first, Botaro remarked, feeling the responsibility to take charge due to his seniority. However, a silence fell over the group, prompting Botaro to let out a resigned sigh. Meanwhile, Raymond found the situation rather amusing. He proposed, let's settle it with a game of rock, paper, scissors. Raymond confidently stepped forward without waiting for their response, and the others begrudgingly followed suit. All right, seems like I'd have to go first. As luck would have it, Raymond emerged as the chosen one to go first. As they decided, a small platform gradually extended towards the central platform. Raymond stepped onto it, only to find another individual approaching from the opposite side. The person shed their robe, revealing a burly man dressed in a biker jacket and torn jeans standing on 7 feet. Ponzu exclaimed, clearly taken aback by the sight of the prisoner. Kenmai noticed her reaction and inquired, do you know him, number 246? Botaro turned to Ponzu as well, curious about the prisoner. Ponzu hesitated for a moment before responding, her expression turning pale. Yes, that guy was known as the Grizzly. His name was Griswold. He used to be a gang leader, infamous for his brutality. He was responsible for the deaths of numerous young men during his gang's reign. She trailed off, unable to bring herself to divulge the rest of the information. The memories associated with Griswold were too disturbing for her to recount in full. She couldn't bring herself to reveal the full extent of Grizzly's atrocities. The reason behind his brutal killings was a harrowing tale. A group of young men had once raped her daughter before subjecting her to mutilation. Upon learning of this horrific crime, Grizzly swiftly sought out the perpetrators and exacted his revenge, killing them slowly and savagely. His preferred method of killing, she recalled, was to consume his victims alive, prolonging their suffering in the most gruesome manner imaginable. The act of vengeance seemed to trigger something within Grizzly, transforming him into a remorseless predator. Even his own gang members eventually turned against him, unable to stomach his barbaric actions any longer. Botaro observed Ponzu's pale expression and realized that she was withholding certain details. So, he's not just your average criminal, hey? He concluded grimly. Chapter 25, Chapter 22, A Grizzly's Guise. As Grizzly drew nearer, his imposing figure towered over Raymond's 6 feet 2 inches frame, casting a shadow over him. Yet, his demeanor defied everyone's expectations. Instead of hostility, his expression held a surprising hint of compassion as he addressed Raymond with a sigh. Oh, young man, would you consider surrendering peacefully? He implored. Raymond remained silent, processing Grizzly's unexpected plea. I've spilled too much blood already. I'd rather not add to it by causing harm to you, Grizzly continued earnestly. What? Ponzu exclaimed in surprise. He seemed so menacing just moments ago. The sincerity in Grizzly's words left everyone bewildered, especially Ponzu, who was all too familiar with the atrocities he had committed to end up in the trick tower. Ha! Enough with the nonsense. Just tell me what game you want to play. Raymond retorted, his displeasure evident. Despite the seemingly sincere words, Raymond couldn't shake the feeling of intense bloodlust emanating from Grizzly the moment he entered the room. He scoffed at the apparent contradiction. These conflicting signals prompted Raymond to shake his head, thoroughly unconvinced. Though the name Grizzly rang a faint bell in Raymond's mind, he couldn't recall any significant details. His extensive network ensured he was familiar with many individuals across the globe, but the lack of substantial information about Grizzly suggested he wasn't particularly noteworthy. Raymond typically kept a close watch on powerful figures who posed a threat to his interests. However, Grizzly remained composed, unfazed by Raymond's dismissive words. He sighed once again as if lamenting an unfortunate situation. "If you insist, then know that I have no desire to harm you willingly," Grizzly stated, his tone oddly calm given the tension in the room. Observing Raymond's lean physique, Grizzly's smile grew gentle. "Would you be willing to wrestle?" As he contemplated the prospect of overpowering Raymond and potentially consuming him, Grizzly felt a primal urge coursing through his body. He had been deprived for far too long of human flesh. "Sure, why not?" Raymond replied with a casual shrug, seemingly unfazed by the gravity of the situation. With the challenge accepted, Grizzly's smile widened, albeit unintentionally. "Let's begin on the count of 3, he proposed, his voice filled with eager anticipation. 3, 2. The tension in the room reached its peak as everyone's eyes fixated on the impending clash, the countdown continuing. 1. In an instant, Grizzly lunged towards Raymond, a strange expression contorting his face. A small drool escaped his lips, intensifying the unsettling atmosphere. In response, Raymond deepened his frown. "He, you're mine!" Silently exclaiming within his mind, Grizzly seized Raymond, his powerful hands closing in. The intention was clear: to bring Raymond down, immobilize him, and relish the feast that awaited. "Hey!" To his surprise, the figure in his grasp seemed unmoved. Confusion washed over Grizzly as he glanced down, only to freeze in terror. A pair of striking crimson eyes met his, their cold gaze piercing through him. "I thought I had him." Before he could comprehend the situation, Grizzly felt a sudden, powerful grip on his hand. He stared in disbelief as Raymond, despite his slender frame, exerted an astonishing amount of strength. In the blink of an eye, Grizzly found himself hurtling towards the ground, his face meeting the hard surface with a resounding thud. "Arg!" Grizzly's face contorted in agony as Raymond effortlessly restrained him, pinning his arms behind his back. What are you?" "Stop, it hurts." Despite his struggles, Grizzly found himself completely at Raymond's mercy, unable to break free. "Disgusting creature!" Raymond's voice, calm and collected, cut through the tension. To Raymond, Grizzly had crossed a line that rendered him unworthy of being considered human. "A simple death would be too merciful for you," Raymond continued, his tone chillingly composed. With a swift motion, Raymond snapped both of Grizzly's hands as a sickening sound echoing through the room. Yet, Raymond's expression remained unchanged, his gaze cold and unwavering. The onlookers couldn't help but flinch at the gruesome sound of bone snapping, and their faces contorted in horror as Raymond inflicted punishment upon Grizzly. With a firm grip on the prisoner's hair, Raymond dragged him towards the edge of the platform, the sense of impending doom palpable in the air. "I've calculated the distance below," Raymond's voice rang out, the gravity of his words sinking in. Grizzly's expression shifted from confusion to realization as the truth dawned on him. Desperation flickered in Grizzly's eyes as he pleaded silently, his survival instincts kicking in. But Raymond's resolve remained unyielding as he spoke, his tone firm yet devoid of malice. "Given your physique, you should survive the fall," Raymond stated. A flicker of hope crossed Grizzly's pained face. The desperation in his eyes turned into a silent plea for mercy as he clung to the possibility of survival. "So, die a slow and miserable death down below would be my punishment for your sins." Raymond's merciless judgment echoed through the room, and Grizzly's desperate hope turned to horror. "And no, please. Of wanting to eat my flesh, you scumbag." Without a shred of hesitation, Raymond callously tossed Grizzly over the edge, his screams fading into a deep, gut-wrenching thud. The atmosphere in the room became thick with dread as the gruesome sound settled, leaving an unsettling silence. All eyes were on Raymond, and an unspoken fear gripped everyone. The once seemingly casual participant had revealed a dark, unforgiving side that sent shivers down their spines. "He looks amicable on the outside yet so cruel on the inside," Badara whispered. The unexpected brutality had left him questioning the true nature of the seemingly composed participant. Ponzu, although familiar with the atrocities committed by Grizzly, now found herself cowering in fear. The stark contrast between Raymond's outward appearance and his merciless actions unsettled her. Bourbon, though visibly affected, maintained a stoic expression while Kenmai observed in silence, exhaling a resigned sigh. "Damn!" Lippo muttered under his breath from his observation post, his disbelief ringing clear in his tone. "I was instructed to keep an eye on this participant, but damn!" Despite the cruelty of Raymond's actions, Lippo couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration for his calculated approach. Raymond seemed to have recognized the inherent inefficiencies of the trick tower's system, leveraging it to his advantage. He knew the trick tower wouldn't expend much effort to save such a prisoner below, deeming it cost-effective to let him meet a slow demise. And, as Raymond had suggested, die a slow death. We've got quite the lineup of participants this year, with a grin, Lippo chuckled to himself. His subordinates exchanged weary glances, clearly accustomed to Lippo's eccentricities.
Thanks for listening.